it's clear the Canton audit of the Canton Police Department showed no conspiracy, but definitely not acting with the proper protocols for an investigation. And the state police, between their botched investigation and their former Trooper Proctor problem, and the way Yuri Buchanan, the trooper, testified on the stand, so evasive that it's clear that they couldn't trust the investigation.
Andrea, I'm pretty sure I asked you this before, but it was mid-trial, and I may have asked Sue too. I have never seen a murder defendant give interviews like she did, and my original position was this is going to be catastrophic. She's going to say something that's going to incriminate her. But the more I thought about it, the more brilliant I thought it was, because jurors, I'm sure, violate the instructions, at least some do. They watch television. Essentially, they get to see Karen Read testify, even when she doesn't testify in the courtroom. So from afar, my sense was the decision I assume she and her counsel made to let her do these interviews probably accrued to her benefit. Do you agree?
I do. I think that had the prosecution's case been less problematic, that never would have happened, right? So you smile every time I invoke this age-old saying of when the constable stumbles, the guilty man goes free.
I'm doing it again right now, so go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great saying. But at the end, it is true, because people, regardless of whether or not people on that jury believe that she actually hit him and he died as a result of that, or fell over in the snow as a result of her hitting him and ultimately died of hypothermia. It is usually more detrimental in a jury's eyes that the Commonwealth or the state or the federal government be above board. I mean, you look at the O.J. Simpson case. Mm-hmm. The evidence against him was overwhelming, right? It was absolutely overwhelming. Even back then, where we weren't maybe as enlightened as we should have been about domestic violence. But Mark,
Furman.
Furman. That, and the testimony about LAPD and people's experience with LAPD, right? That all inured to the benefit of O.J. Simpson. And that's exactly what you find in cases like this. Mm-hmm. Not to say that there weren't some jurors who believe that she was absolutely innocent of the charge.
Yeah.
But on balance, it just doesn't, it rarely, if ever, works out for the state's favor when these things are present.
So
we're talking to Andrea Cabral, by the way, and Sue O'Connell. Sue was in the courtroom yesterday and many days during the trial.
Sue, I was watching one of the shows. Maybe it was yours last night. Maybe it was a Dateline thing from H-Town. I was watching one of these shows, and they showed people outside the courtroom screaming at the O'Keefe family. That's John O'Keefe's family, the police officer who was killed. One of them shouting "cop killer" at the family when they get into the car. I wanted to ask you about that. I found that, I guess, I know that people in pink, they supported Karen Read, but why were they screaming at the family of the dead man?
Do you know if that was from this trial or from the prior trial?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think either way, of course, it's obviously disgusting. And the way that the family of the victim were treated in this trial, in this entire process, is reprehensible. And the people who have been doing that and accusing them of whatever, they just, there's a special spot in hell for them. So
what was their excuse, though? What was their excuse?
Well, their excuse was that they felt that Karen was, and I'm speaking for them, and I've talked to some of them, they felt Karen was innocent, and that the O'Keefe family was ignoring the facts of the case.
Okay.
And instead of saying, investigate these people, they were saying, Karen did it. And then, of course, you've got the interactions of Turtle Boy, Aidan Carney, and the crowds that he was able to attract, both some who were completely behaved and many who have identified as progressive liberals, and others who just like the hunt and like the spectacle of it. So, yelling at O'Keefe family going in and saying, well, we weren't yelling at them, we were yelling at John's friend who was going in, or supporting the language that they used against some of the witnesses is just absolutely reprehensible. This time around, I would say that the crowds and the general environment was less toxic and hostile. And I will say that the crowds, Alan Jackson, Karen's defense attorney, almost daily spoke to them because the buffer zone just went out of control, right? Once they detained people and the charges were thrown out, one of the state troopers said to me, "We're not doing this. We're not going to detain them and then have them back out tomorrow. We're just going to ask everyone to behave." Alan Jackson every day asked them not to yell. And they use the American Sign Language for "I love you." That's how they all communicated.
Which they
when
did
people
yesterday,
came in and out.
Jackson and the other lawyer and Reed
Yep.
when they came out of the courtroom.
And the only time
Yeah.
they yelled was when the verdict came down. So, a lot of lessons to learn here, but that was reprehensible behavior.
I'm going to play a little sound from what Karen Reed had to say to her supporters after the acquittal on the two most serious charges yesterday. Here's Reed.
And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have and my team. Thank you.
Quickly from both of you, Andrea, then Sue, what was your reaction to what Reed said there?
I don't necessarily believe that that's true. I mean, I think she was focused on fighting for her own freedom. I think she probably believes what she said. But I also think that people forget the civil case against her that the O'Keefe family has filed is ongoing. They only held it in abeyance so that she wouldn't, be forced to incriminate herself in a deposition. And what you'll find out ultimately in the civil case may be more enlightening to people through depositions and various other things. So I think that if she genuinely believes that, it will remain to be seen in the civil case. She'll be able to provide evidence of that in her deposition.
Sue, quickly, what was your reaction to those few words from Karen Reed?
I agree with Andrea, but I also have had interactions with Karen where we have talked about John in the courtroom, and she welled up at one point talking about him. I don't know why she didn't talk about him more during the trial.
I agree with you. I'm glad to hear she did that with you. I wish it had happened more publicly, too, actually.
Yeah, I was shocked by it. Twice she really looked welled up and emotional about it. So, again, you can't get inside people's heads, but I think she believes that, and everything Andrea said is right, too.
Andrea, as we know, right up until his death, OJ was looking for the real killer. In a moment of seriousness, now that a jury has spoken, legal system has spoken, she is not responsible for the death, Karen Reed is, of John O'Keefe. Will there be any further investigation of who and what was the cause of his death, or is this the end of the road?
And on the criminal side, that certainly appears to be true right now.
Which? It's over or it's not over?
It's over.
Okay.
But as I say, the civil case is ongoing, and you can always bring a prosecution if something comes out in the civil case.
And Sue, you mentioned Aidan Kearney, who obviously was very high profile in this whole thing, known as Turtle Boy. He is, and obviously for those who weren't following this closely, a huge, if not the hugest advocate for the innocence of Karen Reed. He still has some criminal charges pending against him, does he not?
Yes, he had one criminal charge dismissed or acquitted. He was in court last week, and that was violating a restraining order against an assault charge against him. That was dismissed or acquitted. And he does have witness intimidation charges that are still being adjudicated through the system.
Okay.
Do we have time for a couple
We do.
of
We have a
things?
few minutes, yeah.
Andrea, you've been a prosecutor. You've seen a lot of trials. We've all seen a lot of trials. Why do you think this one seemed to capture, we had a million pieces written in the Globe and everywhere else about, people being furiously on one side, furiously on the other side. New
York Times national news this morning and last night.
Yeah,
by the way.
It was all over the place. Why do you think?
Well, it was the perfect storm of the death of a police officer, which automatically elevates the profile of any case. A legitimate charge of prosecutorial overreach, allegations of police misconduct, evidence of police misconduct, not a great investigation. And we live in a time where conspiracy theories or getting people ginned up over something where they may or may not have all of the information but are still willing to sort of act in furtherance of that. We live in a time where that is almost at peak.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a perfect storm of those things.
You didn't add good-looking white woman. You don't think that was a major contributor? Andrea, then Sue?
I actually, that's kind of interesting. interesting because I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but I think more along the process.
How about you, Sue?
Legal lines,
Well,
but it's not to say that wasn't part of it.
Sue?
I think Karen is both inspirational, aspirational to a number of white women, and they've said it to me that they see Karen in themselves and that this could have happened to them. I mean, as we all know, with any movement, having a face to a story and having people be able to relate to it is how you move forward. Look, she was a single woman. She was a college instructor. She owned her own home. She had a Lexus. She had worked at Fidelity, and she had a cop boyfriend. She's attractive. She's well-spoken, and this happened to her. And I think that's what people relate, women especially, and white women especially relate.
But
You only have a minute.
I wonder what they meant by that. Did they mean by that they could be set up by the cops, or did they mean they were out nights for heavy drinking and could be in a blizzard?
Yeah, all of it.
Okay.
All of it.
All
You
right.
could just go out with your friends one night.
Welcome to the world of many others not similarly situated.
Exactly. And
I
every
knew.
time I say this is just like BLM, they get mad at me. So I'm telling you, we all share this challenge.
Yeah.
Sue,
Happy
before you both go, I experienced something wonderful last night. As Marjorie knows, I skirt through every talk show I can find before I come to work in the morning, and every talk show on the radio I can find at night, just see what they're talking about. So I came upon I didn't even tell you this, sports station
radio?
last night. And I feel bad I don't know the name of the host because he was quite good. And out of nowhere, he says, I'm really going to miss Canton Confidential. And Sue, he doesn't even mention your last name. And then he mentions all the regular guests you have on the show. He says, I don't know what I'm going to do. It was really this beautiful tribute to the work relentlessly you've done. And you really have done a terrific job, by the way. It's
Great, I
really...
appreciate it. And if there's any jurors or alternates out there, I'd love to talk to you. Or if you know anyone, get in touch.
Hey, so
Okay.
would we, by the way. When you're done with Sue, give us a call. Hey, Andrea and Sue, we really appreciate your time and your analysis this morning. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with media maven NBC 10 Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, commentator and news influencer at NBC Boston, and the host, of course, of Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed trial, weeknights at 7 on NBC 10, also available Sundays on Peacock. And, of course, Andrea Cabral, who's with us so often, former Sheriff of Suffolk County, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety. Thanks to you both. Okay, after this quick break, we are opening the phone and text lines, asking you about yesterday's verdict at 877-301-8970. Was justice done? And any of your thoughts about why this story has captured not just people down around the courthouse in Dedham, but all across the country, and in some cases all across the world. What is the fascination with the Karen Reed trial? You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, until recently, Massachusetts was one of just 4 states in the country without a poet laureate. It was worth the wait. Reggie Gibson, the state's inaugural poet laureate, joins us. Plus, award-winning writer Nina McLaughlin and her meditations on the summer solstice. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Native Plant Trust, celebrating 125 years of commitment to protecting New England's native plants. More information about how using natives can help mitigate climate change at nativeplanttrust.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Ask the Governor with more Healy. Wednesday, 11 to 12 next week. We just heard from Andrea Cabral and Sue O'Connell on the verdict in the second Karen Reed criminal trial. Now it's your turn to weigh in on the verdict, the media circus, the drama, the intrigue by call or text 877-301-8970. 3.5 years out from the death of John O'Keefe, who, in my estimation, I didn't follow it as closely as you did, was not mentioned nearly enough in the media coverage, in my opinion.
You know what we should say about him?
What?
That when his brother and sister-in-law died prematurely, he was a single guy, took care of their children. So the children lost their parents, and now they've lost the man that was taking care of them.
Countless news stories, reporters, blog posts, anything. A whole other trial that ended in a mistrial, the first one, appeals in vain to the Supreme Court. Where are you in this case? Do you feel justice was served yesterday? Was the whole thing bungled from the start? Did you follow both trials religiously? And by the way, you're free to call and say you had no interest, this is beneath you. As I said, the New York Times thought it was newsworthy. The Washington Post thought it was newsworthy. Every major network in America, including the cables. Our number is 877-301-8970. Or on the other side of the spectrum, this will aggravate Marjorie. Are you sick and tired of hearing about the case everywhere you go? 877-301-8970. Can I run something by you before we get to the calls? Mm-hmm. Andrea didn't list the attractive white woman thing. I have been a firm believer forever that that's always a huge factor in certain criminal cases. You don't think it was a factor here?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Globe interviewed somebody from at BU, from a lawyer there, saying it is really unusual to see a white woman of means in this kind of situation.
That's a very good point, yeah.
So she did work at Fidelity. She was an adjunct professor. She was able to post $50,000 in bail. That enabled her to be out giving these interviews to 60 Minutes elsewhere. So she thought it was a confluence of things. It was that white woman of means. It was a cop, both good-looking people. He was a good-looking guy. She's a good-looking woman. Small-town cops, small-town screwing up by the cops. Somebody texted before that they think the state police, who've had a lot of scandals involving them, are not well-liked in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And all this influencer stuff. This subreddit page, Justice for Karen Reed, with 20,000 members. Beth Teitel, who writes great columns for the Boston Globe, talked about how a woman delayed her hysterectomy to time it so she would be home recovering around the time the case was on TV, and televised trials draw even more
Here's
attention.
Amber in Worcester. My grandson is visiting from Tennessee, as he does every summer. He was watching TV with me last night and said, this trial is still going on, meaning he's watching in Tennessee. Let me just say one other thing before we get to the calls. The thing you were discussing with Sue at the end of the year, I watched a lot of the interviews with the people outside because it fascinates me. Yeah. And in some way really upset me. Some of them, and again, the interviews are edited, obviously. Some of them did mention Officer O'Keefe, but and it's fine to believe that Karen Reed was not guilty. It's fine to believe she's guilty. You're entitled to that, obviously. But the exaltation about the acquittal without mentioning the fact that there's still a really decent guy who lost his life by a lot of these people really set me off. But by the way, I started to say a lot of them said what you were discussing with Sue. A lot of them said, I can identify with her. They didn't define what that meant, but a lot of them said that could have been me.
Yeah, I guess that was being set up by the police. And that certainly is something that happens all the time in the black community, as we know, especially with young people in the black community.
Let's go to Paul.
Paul and Hingham. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul. You're first. Welcome.
Thanks, Jim and Marjorie.
Sure.
I guess my thoughts on the matter is that I'm really disturbed that why people have come out so vehemently in favor of Karen Reed. Obviously somebody died. She was drunk. She hit something, and I guess it bothers me why people came out so in favor of her without having facts in front of them.
Yeah, well, I think that there was some confusion about how this taillight was smashed, that there was some conspiracy, or maybe it did happen this way, that it was the cops were somehow involved in smashing the taillight, that it didn't happen when she hit him. I think a lot of people think what you think, Paul. They think she did have too much to drink, and she backed into him. Maybe she did it on purpose. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she did it by accident. But I think that's what a lot of people did think.
And, Paul, I have to disagree with one part of this. Well, I didn't follow this during the trial nearly as closely as Marjorie and obviously as Sue and Andrea did. I found the comments of real people stunning in how much they did know. There was some misinformation, but people really study it, whether it was reading the reports, being in the Canton area, following Turtle Boy or whatever the hell it was. There were a lot of people who lived and died with this case. Paul, thanks for the call.
And
you know, we didn't ask them. This is a really important one because, you know, my ultimate cause celeb is cameras in the courtroom, and they're not in federal courtrooms. This is a state courtroom. Anonymous texter, proof positive is a trial should not be televised. Turns the whole thing into a circus. Everybody performing for the camera. Once again, Jim is on the wrong side of the issue. Do you?
No, I totally disagree
with that person.
Yeah, I think it's great that you can televise trials so people can see
Me
the
too.
judicial system in action. And the idea that people are performing for the cameras, I mean, they're sitting in a packed courtroom.
And they also forget the cameras.
Well, they
there.
got a lot of people to perform for.
Yeah.
The lawyers, the jury, the judge. I mean, I don't know that the camera's on the top of the list. And by the way, when you do have cameras in the courtroom, it's pretty discreet. You're not like
Can't even see them unless you're looking for them.
Yeah, I think that.
Paul, thanks.
I think
you know
it's-
that line that you mentioned to
What?
one of them? I heard a repeat. That was yesterday of Alan Jackson in his closing comments saying they didn't go into the house.
Well,
not
okay.
once. Not when it was.
Here's where I think you could have these conspiracies come from. The guy that owned the house, what was he? He was a retired police officer. Who else was in there? An ATF agent, this Brian Higgins guy that had supposedly some romantic interest in her. And so they were all out drinking together earlier in the evening. O'Keefe dies in the driveway of this O'Keefe fellow. They never go into the house to see, you know, just to do an investigation in
with
there.
you. It's a real
and I
problem.
think that would lead people to believe, well, who knows what happened? That it could have been true, that maybe he went in the house, maybe they were all drinking too much, maybe, by the way, his injuries were fractured skull, abrasions to his right arm, swelling to his eyes, cuts over his right eye, his nose, bruises hand and knee. You could say, did that happen from getting hit by a car? Did that happen from getting beat up in the house? You know, I like I said, I find the latter hard to believe, but I wasn't in the courtroom every day like Sue O'Connell was. Okay, we're talking about the Karen Reed trial, asking why it's become this international sensation, asking what you think of the verdict, what you think of the police conduct, and anything else you have to say about this trial. It was just ended in a Dedham courthouse and had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people outside cheering, most of them cheering wildly when the verdict was announced yesterday. Listening to BPR and GBH and NPM. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, 877-301-8970.
Increasing number of Salvadorans are returning to their country from the U.S.
Tengo un par de negocios que me dan absolutamente la confianza de quedarme.
The country is giving me the confidence I need to move my business here, this man says. El Salvador to the U.S., then back to El Salvador. What sparked that reversal? Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate. Their website includes listings of homes from Hingham to Duxbury, as well as information about each South Shore community. More about the team and current listings at deanandhamilton.com. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marge Egan, streaming youtube.com/GBH. As we're talking about the Karen Reed verdict yesterday, not guilty on the two serious charges, guilty of driving under the influence. I think she got a year's probation, and she is obviously free. Here's an anonymous texter. I wasn't following closely, but it was a departure from the Trump administration news. I'm surprised Trump didn't take credit for the verdict as, quote, there has never been anything like this before. It was huge. A witch hunt against poor Karen. By the way, you know, that also bothered me. Not only was I upset about the press, I don't think, talking enough about John O'Keefe. And again, I had anecdotal coverage, so maybe I'm not being fair. I hate it when reporters refer to her as Karen in this case.
As opposed to Karen Reed.
Or Reed or
Yep.
Ms. Reed. I mean, it's not like she's your buddy, kind of. It just drove me little nuts. In any case.
I just wanted to mention, though, that this is part of our obsession with true crime.
It is.
People may remember a few years ago, they had the Netflix show, that gruesome one, Jeffrey Dahmer, the monster. The New York Times paid $25 million about 5 years ago for Serial Productions, and they started out with that first serial true crime case about whether this young man killed this woman or didn't kill this young woman. Dateline had the show last night. We have a huge interest in true crime all around the country, TV shows, podcasts, and this is part of that fascination.
Sheila in a car. Hey, Sheila.
Hi, guys. I'm calling for 3 quick things. I know you probably have lots on the line.
It's okay.
One thing is, and forgive me if this has been mentioned, but not guilty does not mean innocent.
That's
Very
right.
good point. It hasn't been mentioned. I'm glad you said it. Go ahead.
And with a second point, there's a term of the fruit of the poisonous tree, and I think that the charges were it was overcharged, as mentioned by the way your guests were horrific on this issue and all issues. But I want to say that I think that a lot of times the police officers or a trooper bring the case to the DA's office. And from seeing what happened with Proctor, I assume he pushed and pushed for a higher charge, and it may have just been something unbeknownst to them that he had a skin in the game that they went with it. But lastly, the attorney for her, Alan Jackson, and the team were so magnificent in terms of a defense of a defendant that the Commonwealth will benefit really from this, because with the TVs in place and us all watching, we were able to see how the system works beautifully when a defendant has money to have an attorney.
Exactly.
Wonderful point.
Yep, to show reasonable doubt. And he took every opportunity from the Fed's case, bringing in experts from the Feds, to show that this case had reasonable doubt written all over it. And I think we will benefit because the Commonwealth has to up their game and never let this happen again.
That was a brilliant
Sheila,
call,
I recognize your voice.
Great.
Thank you very much for calling. And,
Thanks,
two things I want to point out. Obviously, that's a very good, just like O.J. Simpson, one of the most, Johnny Cochran, one of the most brilliant lawyers
Well, it's
I've
not
ever
just
seen.
Cochran. How about Barry Scheck and the DNA stuff, the Innocence
but
Project?
Cochran was the one that came up with the,
If
police.
it does not fit, you must acquit.
And what did he do before he had the O.J. Simpson case? He prosecuted cases of police picking on African Americans in L.A. This was his area of expertise. So that's the money. The money almost always wins, unfortunately, if you have the money for really great lawyers. But the second thing is that in February 2022, he was not charged. She was not charged with second-degree murder. They upped when the grand jury indicted her for second-degree murder. It started out as manslaughter and drinking under the influence.
Meaning the DA's office.
Yes, the initial charges from the cops, rather. To me, it should have been involuntary manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident, drunk driving.
You, Andrea, and now Sheila all said the same thing about overcharging. The Globe editorial
Happens
today.
A lot.
However, there is a school of thought that believes you do overcharge so that you give the jury this feeling, well, I'll split the baby. I'll come in somewhere in the middle. Obviously, it didn't work in big time in this case, but that's it. Susan in the car. She's on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. We've been traveling from Massachusetts. Every time we stopped for dinner or had a drink at a bar, people realize we're from Massachusetts because my husband's distinct accent. You probably have a license plate, too. All they want to talk about is Karen Reed, and they all believe she was innocent. The first point that Sheila made, if it escaped you, which is really important, she was not found innocent. That's not what a jury does. A jury finds you guilty or not guilty, and all the jury has to do to find you not guilty is find that there was reasonable doubt, not that you proved your innocence. That's not the obligation of a defendant. Gwen in Dartmouth, you're next on Boston BPR. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
So I don't know where to start. I got sucked into this case because I didn't even know who Karen Reed was, and then I heard you guys talking about her, and I went and watched the Hulu docuseries Body in the Snow, and that got me hooked. And so I watched the entire trial, and I was quite disappointed in the jury, I have to say. I don't think if I'd been on the jury, I would have found her guilty of murder, too, just because I didn't think they had quite enough evidence for that. But I would have found her guilty for involuntary manslaughter. And I just was kind of disappointed. It was anticlimactic for me. I was absolutely convinced that she was guilty.
Why were you so drawn to this case, Gwen?
Because I think the docuseries made it seem like there was maybe some funny business going on. It didn't push me either way. I was still pretty neutral, but there was enough in there that made it seem like, well, maybe there was some stuff going on with the cops. But then after watching the trial, I think that the mishandling people talk about really was due to the weather. I think it was a difficult case. I mean, Michael Proctor, of course, said some inappropriate things. I don't think he,
Proctor was the state
fired.
cop who was fired after he had to read his texts at the first trial, which were misogynistic and grotesque. And he was the lead investigator in the case. Go ahead. And obviously he didn't testify in the second trial, which obviously did not... was an opening, let's put it that way, for the defense. Yeah. Gwen, that was a great call. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't find it unusual that people get caught up in trials. I mean, you see people that look like you, that act like you, in their suit if they're a man, dressed if they're a woman, and they, not this case, went out and shot somebody in the head or beat somebody to death or did something that is absolutely out of the imagination of most people. And to me, that's what makes it fascinating, the details of how of these cases. I loved covering trials. I thought they were absolutely...
You're going to hate this, but your trial coverage was fabulous.
I loved covering
I didn't even
trials.
know you, like during OJ, but I read your stuff. You were at the trial.
Well, OJ, Louise Woodward, people may remember that. She was
Absolutely.
the nanny that was, they charged her with second-degree
That's right
murder,
here,
too.
by the way,
That was in Cambridge. Martha Coakley was the DA at that time. Shaken baby whole
syndrome,
situation. And that's a tricky one, and she got... They gave her time served. Remember, 9 months, the judge, and there was an uproar over the Louise Woodward case. But anyway, trials are fascinating.
Listen, everywhere. Anonymous texter. I was in the emergency room last night. I hope you're okay. Nurses were talking about the verdict. I talked to 3 different nurses who were adamant that he was not hit by a car. Quote, we see car accidents all the time. His injuries were not by a car. One nurse said those are absolutely dog bites. I didn't read that because of the opinion of the nurses. I read it because whether you're in the Outer Banks of North Carolina or an emergency room in Massachusetts, this was a huge deal.
Listen to this. This is Beth Teitel. I remember before that there was a woman who planned her hysterectomy over being able to watch the trial on TV. She delayed it so she could be home recuperating. In Foxborough, a YMCA member takes group fitness classes with his phone, streaming the trial, positioned in front of his mat and his AirPods in his head so he can listen to the whole thing while he's in class.
We've mentioned OJ a few times. I shouldn't laugh, but anonymous texter, I'm waiting for Reed's forthcoming attention-seeking memoir, If I Did It, which, if you recall, was the...
Listen to this. In Kingston,
OJ alleged title.
A person told Teitel, a respiratory therapist named Eileen Holmes had a flash of self-recognition when she admitted, the Karen case has become my entire personality. She said she's been surprised by her own behavior and has either pulled in relatives or become the object of her relatives' ridicule.
We're going to get back to the calls in about 30 seconds. I just want to say again, for that texter, respect your opinion, and there's a divide on this. Cameras in the courtroom, it doesn't matter whether you think justice was done or not done. You got to see it at work, which I think is hugely valuable. And if you end up being critical of what you saw, then that's good. You at least know how it's happening. And if you felt good about the whole process and lawyering and all that stuff, I mean, I think there is nothing but good that comes from this. David in Northampton, you're next. Welcome to BPR. Hi.
Hi there.
Hi.
First of all, local media is so important. So thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
And I understand you've got to cover what the people want to hear, but I think with all of it, we're focusing on things that I just think we're focusing on the wrong things. I think there's plenty of trials that are happening statewide and nationally that we should, the general public should be more fascinated with. And
Like what, David? Which trial are you thinking of?
Oh man. I mean, well, that's the thing. The trials that I know about are, well, I'm talking about like things for the environment.
Oh, okay.
Trials that are before the court that are impacting people locally. I mean, there's things I learn about all the time where I'm like, wow, I didn't hear about this. And a lot of people, everybody can say they've heard about this, but
David, if I may, I rarely say something like the following. I don't know if you're a new listener because we're just on NEPM out in that part of the state. We cover a lot of those things. We've covered environmental trials. We've covered, when I say covered, talked about other criminal trials. So I hope if you're new to listening, you keep listening, and I hope we'll satisfy what you think is a responsible way to cover the justice system. And thanks very much for your perspective. We appreciate it.
But it's not like you don't learn anything from this. I think a lot of people probably were shocked by police officers running around putting evidence in these plastic Solo cups, blood from the scene.
How about texting sexist, disgusting comments to each other? And by the way, the cop who did testify, unlike Proctor, had been fired. There's a thumbs up emoji about the disgusting things that Proctor said about Karen Reed.
And again, I think you expect more from the state police because they are the people that are investigating murders. And like I've said a million times now, you're at the murder scene. You don't go into the house, or not the murder scene, but the dead body scene. Let's put it that way. And you don't go into the house.
Did you follow it closely enough to know that if any of the defense lawyers asked that question, the why question attached to that of any of the cops? Do you know if they did?
I don't know, but I know that her lawyers, Alan Jackson was one of them. By the way, he defended Kevin Spacey in California in his grabbing the young man in the bar trial. Anyway, I don't know. All I know is that he made a big deal, Jackson did, about saying they never once entered the house with the people that were out drinking with John O'Keefe and Karen Reed earlier in the evening. And that was owned by a Boston, or he was renting or owning, I don't know if he rented or owned it, by a former Boston police officer.
Amanda in Boston, welcome. Hi.
Hi. This is a great segue because we've talked about it being about Karen, and maybe that's true, and I necessarily don't relate with her, but I think her being not guilty means that the cops can't pin it on her, and that's the victory, right? For me, it's not about her, Karen, it's about the cops not being able to do this. And I think to your point, hearing those text messages being read by people who are literally employed to protect people,
exactly right,
was incredibly disturbing. And so I think that the focus should be on the cops and cop behavior. And this is by no means something that's unique to this area. I mean, police departments everywhere, I think, are rife with this behavior. So I would love to see that be the focus. Will it be? Probably not. But I think, that's the takeaway for me.
Well, we'll try our best. I think you're exactly right. I think that was a wonderful point, Amanda, and thanks for making it. Really appreciate it.
Margaret in Waltham makes a great point, too, via text. Says, the Reed trial was interesting to us all because it was not, and it's still not, clear what happened to Mr. O'Keefe. The case has still not been solved. Even with this verdict, no explanation for the significant bite marks on his arm. It seems highly likely it was a cover-up. The dog went missing, right? And there was confusion about the bite marks. There was a German Shepherd named Chloe in the house who's no longer living with the family. That the dog was sent off someplace else. But there were two theories. One, that they were bite marks from the dog, and then another one of the experts said that the marks on his arm were from the shattered taillight on her car. So you had the conflicting, as Andrea talked about before, the conflicting experts. And once again, when you have lawyers to whom you're paying a lot of money, those lawyers can hire very impressive experts to come on the stand and offer their expertise.
Well, keep in mind, in this case, ordinarily there is obviously an imbalance if you're wealthy enough or raise enough money to hire the best lawyers, as you mentioned, OJ here, whatever. There was a special prosecutor. I don't know if that's the title here. Hank Brennan, who was picked by the DA in this case, who was a very experienced defense attorney and others. So this was not some overworked young prosecutor.
But look what he was stuck with. He was stuck with a second-degree murder.
I agree.
He was stuck with the ineptitude of the investigation. So
I just meant the quality of the lawyer.
Yeah,
it was not like a lot of young prosecutors have 4,000 cases.
Oh my God!
And as competent as they may be, working for no money. And by the way, speaking of that, as far as I know, the lawyers, the 80% of the criminal cases who are represented by private counsel, I was going to say volunteering because they get paid so little, it's practically volunteering. Still no resolution from Beacon Hill in terms of adequate
But you do see
pay.
A tremendous disparity when a lot of trials I used to cover where the DAs are just, way in over their head.
Well, how about Martha Clark and Oliver Darden? And Darden, is that his last name?
O.J. Simpson.
In the O.J. Simpson case. I mean, it was Christopher Darden. Thank you, John. It was ridiculous. Ellen and Carr, hi.
Hi. I just feel like this is kind of like a metaphor for what's going on in the United States, and we're using this like we sort of did with race in the OJ trial, and like not having rights. People are really kind of on edge, and you're bringing a lot of people together who feel like the government is putting a boot on their throat. I truly believe it was a horrible accident. But the aftermath of what happens, like I think they overcharged her, which was not, like, this should have been not even at trial area, but something happened. I don't think, but other people are being dragged into it and smeared. And all of these people are feeling like they're things that, like, they feel kind of the boot on their throat, like women's rights. There's a lot being brought into this, where people are bringing their thoughts that they can't express, usually, to government, and are using it as like one of those things.
I think that is that is a fascinating explanation. That it was, I think in the O.J. Simpson case, where you had a jury, predominantly people of color, they're listening to that Mark Furman, the chief detective on the case, using the N-word over and over and over, and they're thinking, really, I'm gonna go with this guy, and it could be the same thing in this case where you expect better from the police than what you saw, and maybe they did think she backed into him either on purpose or accidentally, but just weren't going to go with that verdict.
Remember the racial divide in the polling after the O.J. Simpson verdict?
Yeah,
white people
all thought he was guilty, and black people thought he wasn't. But again,
for the reasons the caller mentioned,
because of the long-time corruption and police brutality toward black Americans in L.A. for decades.
Where do you want to go next?
Let's go to Nancy and Wendell. Wendell, where's Wendell?
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, it's in Western Mass.
Oh, hi.
Welcome. Good to have you.
We're so glad you're calling from Western Mass, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy.
I have several points I want to make. The first is that we're obligated to consider anyone who's accused of anything in this country to be innocent unless and until they have been proven guilty.
That would be correct.
All of the testimony I saw that came out in that trial, I wasn't obsessed with this, by the way, until the first jury partially acquitted her and they decided to retry her. And then I started paying attention. The testimony that came out was things like a snowplow driver drove by several times after the man had been dropped off and never saw a body on the ground. His body wasn't discovered until the following morning at, I think, 6:30 by Miss Reed herself. The second point was that there was testimony that the injuries were not caused by a car accident, and including that some of the marks on his arms were probably caused by dog bites.
There were witnesses who said otherwise, as you know, Nancy.
They had both, dog bites or tail light.
Which is usually equals reasonable doubt. But wrap up, Nancy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is my point, that there was no evidence proving her guilt.
Obviously, the jury agreed with you, as evidenced by the fact that on two most important counts, unanimously not guilty. Nancy, thanks for your call. Hope you make another one soon. Anonymous texter, congrats to Karen, but now it's time to tune back to our little authoritarian coup.
Well, another texter said they'd rather talk about this than Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, Jordan Hudson. They've been keeping a very low profile.
Actually, that's not true. There was Peace and People 2 days ago. I didn't tell you about it because I knew we'd have to talk about it if I did.
Oh, I'll go look at it after the show.
I'm not going to tell you about it.
But,
by the way, that caller that talked, we should, next week sometime, we should do some discussion about the police and what lessons should be drawn from this case. Should there be reform? We should also talk to Governor Healy when she's with us next week about what her takeaways are vis-a-vis police and police reform.
But the bottom line of this, there's a 45, is he 45? Was he 45 years old?
He was 46, I think,
man who was taking care of the children.
Nobody's held accountable.
And nobody's held accountable. And by all accounts, he was a great guy. Anyway, the show continues here in Boston for you listening on NAPM, including up in Wendell, a place I just learned about. Tune into the fabulous 413. They'll be starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon on NAPM, and it's a special hour on Juneteenth. We're going to continue here in Boston at 89.7 GBH. After the news, we're going to talk with national security expert Juliet Kayyem on what's going on with Israel and Iran and whether they're going to get involved. We'll have our own panel on Juneteenth as well. And we're going to talk about, or have actually, puppets right here in Studio 3. We're going to be on the radio, but thank goodness we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I'm Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browder. You are listening to BPR on GBH and NAPM. And thanks again to the folks up at NAPM in Western Mass for tuning in. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Insurance coverage from healthcare experts for businesses, individuals, families, and retirees. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Learn more at mgbhp.org/everyday. Experience the inspiring story of Urva Shivad, an outspoken immigrant, lesbian, and woman of color who helped shape the modern-day gay rights movement. Don't miss There Are Things to Do tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, ahead on hour 2 of BPR. As Israel and Iran keep bombing each other, Donald Trump says he alone knows whether he'll join the bombing of Iran. As war in the Middle East heats up yet again, we'll talk with national security expert Juliet Kayyem.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a Juneteenth panel. Boston's first black mayor, Kim Janey, educator and lawyer Ted Landsmark, and Michael Curry of the NAACP and Mass League of Community Health Centers all will join us for a discussion on the meaning of Juneteenth and the importance of joyful resistance. And speaking of resistance, we'll listen to producer Zoe Matthews' piece on protest music in 2025. That's all ahead. Hour number 2, BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Calls for the assassination of Iran's supreme leader are growing in Israel. Speaking to reporters today, Israel's defense minister compared Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to Hitler and reiterated it was time for Iran's supreme leader to go. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reports.
Speaking to reporters in Holon, the worst-hit suburb of Tel Aviv Thursday, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said that killing Iran's supreme leader is a goal of the war. The Israeli military was directed and knows that in order to achieve all the objectives of the war, this man certainly cannot continue to exist, he said. Earlier this week, Katz said, quote, "We will strike the Iranian dictator everywhere." That came after the Israeli military struck an Iranian state TV studio. About the supreme leader, President Trump posted this week on his social media platform, Truth Social, quote, "We know exactly where he is," but added, quote, "We are not going to take him out, kill, at least for now." Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
It's still unclear if President Trump intends to order U.S. military strikes on Iran over the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. However, some military assets are already in place. Military and security expert Michael Knights has spent years studying Iran, Israel, and U.S. strategy in the region. And he spoke to NPR about what global officials know and don't know about Iran's nuclear program.
The International Atomic Energy Agency, is clear about what it doesn't know. Or at least it knows that there's much it doesn't know because the inspection access has not been what it wanted it to be. That's why it criticised, the Board of Governors criticised Iran so heavily right ahead of this Israeli strike.
Michael Knights is a fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. The nation's top safety investigator issued an urgent recommendation for engines used on many passenger jets. NPR's Joel Rose reports investigators want to address the possibility of smoke entering the cockpit or cabin.
The urgent recommendation stems from an incident in December of 2023 when acrid white smoke filled the cockpit of a Southwest Airlines flight after a bird was ingested into the left engine shortly after takeoff from New Orleans. Another Southwest flight out of Havana, Cuba, had a similar problem. The National Transportation Safety Board issued the recommendation for planes equipped with CFM LEAP engines, like those used by the Airbus 320neo and Boeing 737 MAX. The NTSB wants the flight crews of planes with similar engines to be notified of the potential hazard, and it's asking aviation regulators to study other variants of the LEAP engine. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
Hurricane Eric made landfall in southern Mexico this morning as a Category 3 storm, top sustained winds 125 miles per hour. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Police in Beverly say one person is dead, another in serious condition after a plane crash early this morning near the grounds of Beverly Regional Airport. Reports say at approximately 8:45 a.m., Beverly police and fire officials responded to reports of a plane crash on Sam Fonzo Drive just outside of the airport. Upon arrival, crews located a single-engine aircraft with significant damage. 2 men, a pilot and passenger, both trapped inside. 1 man was pronounced dead at the scene. The other man was transported to a hospital with serious injuries. The Federal Aviation Administration and National Transportation Safety Board have been notified and are on their way to investigate. In celebration of Juneteenth, the African American Heritage Trail of Martha's Vineyard is dedicating a new trail stop this Friday, tomorrow. It's called the Dragonfly House, says Heritage Trail Executive Director Elaine Weintraub Cawley, and its history dates back to 150 years ago when it was owned by John Ritchie,
who was the diarist for the Mass 54th Regiment in the Civil War. He was a dedicated abolitionist, and he was the quartermaster for the Mass 54th.
The dedication of the 41st stop on the Heritage Trail is tomorrow at noon. A reception will follow. The house is just south of Inkwell Beach. We are at 84 degrees in Boston, headed up towards the low 90s. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be live at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with live music from New York City-based flamenco duo Alba Music. And from 1 to 2, it is Ask the General Manager of the MBTA. It's going to be great. Philip Eng. Hi, Jim.
I used to do flamenco, by the way. A lot developing on Iran, Israel, potential regime change, obviously potential U.S. involvement. Earlier today, we spoke via Zoom with Juliette Kayyem. She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Hey, Juliette. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Juliette, before we talk to you more, we want to play a little clip from you from the president yesterday talking about whether or not he would be attacking Iran. Here it is.
You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you gotta do something. You gotta negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that, and they got hit.
Okay, Juliette, that was yesterday. Where are we today?
You mean is there greater clarity? No. I mean, I'm assuming that was not clarity, and whether we ever the greater clarity. And remember, this caveated explanation of like no one knows what I'm going to do but I just like all this attention follows a statement earlier. I can't remember if it was written or he said it, where he wants total surrender by Iran, and follows a midnight directive to a city, Tehran, of 10 million people to evacuate. It wasn't even to like U.S. citizens or embassy personnel. So this thing is not fully baked, is being played out publicly because of the way Donald Trump likes to play out. But we need to start from the beginning, which is, or the beginning of all of this, which is that Donald Trump could not stop Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel from doing what we clearly didn't want to be done. And he is now trying to rewind everything, he being Trump, rewind everything in a way to show that he's leading this, not Netanyahu. But we were in negotiations. We were begging to continue in those negotiations, and Israel killed the top negotiator. Period.
Well, and keep in mind, the reason we're in negotiations is because we undid the prior deal in which the enrichment, which everybody agrees is going on, the Obama deal is going on. By the way, in terms of...
Trump got rid of in his first term.
In terms of what you just said, just quickly about Trump wanting to take credit for this, he posted on Truth Social the other night, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Tehran. Can we go back, as you said, for a second, and, shades of weapons of mass destruction that don't exist. Tulsi Gabbard testifies in March, and then, by the way, as clueless as she is, she's obviously got an infrastructure behind her in the intelligence community, says the intelligence community says they're not building a nuclear bomb in Iran. Trump has asked about it 2 days ago. I don't care what she said. This is national intelligence person. I don't care what she said. I believe that Iran was very close to a bomb. Again, we know the enrichment is happening. We don't know the delivery system is ready. We don't know. What do we know?
Well, we would have known a lot more if the JCPOA had been in place.
What's the JCPOA?
I'm sorry, that's the original agreement, the one that Trump tore up.
Okay.
So we know from the IAEA, the International Association of basically the atomic energy, that they also do not believe that this has been weaponized. There are others. I want to give the sort of fairest assessment. There are others, deeply ensconced in this world who are simply saying that no country that has that much enriched uranium doesn't build a bomb. So I want our listeners should know that. But our assessment and the assessment of all entities but Israel is that there was no imminency, and that's a key term here in terms of war. There was no imminency in terms of Iran's capabilities. Israel brought us to this moment because Netanyahu has wanted to bring us to this moment, and we are now considering sort of finishing the deal or killing their supreme leader with fault. I mean, I literally can't believe we're reliving this nightmare with faulty intelligence being driven by a political agenda, not an intelligence agenda. No authorization, which we'll get into in terms of what the United States would do or could do. No plan for what this will look like the day after. I am tired of these people, blowing up deals. When Trump ripped up the deal with Iran, they promised us this was not a prelude to war. It was a prelude to a better deal. They don't do that deal. And now the fact that there isn't a deal becomes the justification for military engagement. I am livid. I do not believe a word of any of this. And Khomeini is not great, but right now, Netanyahu and Trump are also not adequate or truthful narrators.
By the way,
three liars. I've got three liars. You asked me to want to go to war based on three leadership liars? Yeah. No. The answer is no.
By the way, Netanyahu, CNN did a great thing the other night, played Netanyahu through the years, saying they're years away from a nuclear weapon. Right. They're years away. And then all of a sudden now they're weeks away. But, despite everything you say and your criticism of Netanyahu and that sort of thing, experts whose opinion I respect, who actually know what they're talking about, who are not like warmongers, have said even if this in normal times would not be the time to do it, in light of the fact that Israel has softened up the military capabilities of Iran, if there's ever a time we should consider with these bunker busters, these 30,000-pound bombs to destroy their nuclear capacity, now's the time to do it. Meaning, we didn't create the current environment. Israel did. Let's take advantage of it. What's your response to that?
So advantage of it for what? So you
to destroy their nuclear capability.
Yes. For how long? With what consequences? And third, with any preparation for what Iran's response is going to be. I've been saying to this for since Trump 2.0. They act like other countries don't have agency. I am not defending what Iran is likely to do at all. I want to be clear here. But have we had a discussion about the vulnerabilities of our military bases throughout the Middle East, of Americans and other soft targets in Europe, let alone the United States? Hezbollah is eviscerated. Syria is now, yes, Iran is weaker. Is this the moment that we think, we're going to, basically they'll quietly go into the night, or are they going to see their weakness as Russia did and see their own weakness and launch attacks? I don't have the answer to that question, but I am not going to buy an argument that was sold to this country in 2002 and 2003. That there's a liberation movement that just needs a little bit of regime change.
Well, can I just add, the warning, you're concerned about what happens after, just to complete the thought, the fear is they go kill some of our people on bases in the Middle East, for example, and then the United States is totally drawn into the war, because obviously we have to retaliate for the death of our people.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, the theory of this action, and I'm not, let me put this affirmatively. I do believe Netanyahu wants regime change. I believe it. And I believe he, and maybe their intelligence is better, but he believes that with just a little bit of push, this country that has been under hardcore, horrible Islamic rule since 1979 is all of a sudden going to, flourish. And it could be true. It could not be true. I don't know. But I don't know why you bomb first and then drag us into it. So we could have and we'll get into the U.S. and what we're saying in a second. But this idea that this is easy is belied by years of really failed intervention in the Middle East. And I think people are trying to sort of sell like the Libya scenario where if we just sort of try to, isolate Gaddafi, everything will be fine. I think history shows that wasn't even true.
Well, the Libyans killed him in the end,
this
right?
Is Iran. No, this is a superpower in the Middle East. This is the equivalent, this is not Algeria, this is not Tunisia, this is not even Lebanon. This is a powerhouse. And Netanyahu wants his wars for a reason. Maybe he found that this was a good time to go in, but and maybe these successes that we are amazed at in terms of their intelligence in the first couple days can continue Israel's successes. But I don't know what changed on Friday. You tell me what changed on Friday.
Well, what makes me nervous is some of the reporting says that what changed is that the president was watching Fox News and saw how the attacks by Israel were hailed as military genius, and it was wonderful. Yeah. And so he wanted to capture some of that genius veneer for himself. What scares me, obviously, we had the disaster. Colin Powell, people respected General Colin Powell. He got up and said there were weapons of mass destruction. We all remember that. That was a disaster. disaster. We had Dick Cheney. People thought he had a big brain. They may not have liked him. And then George W. Bush got us into that last mess. So we have, as you pointed out, been fooled and made fools of ourselves and lost all these lives and injuries by going into invading the wrong country. But it's even worse now, I think, because the people that used to be around the president, like a General Mattis or all these other generals, are supplanted by people like Pete Hegseth, which makes me very, very nervous.
No, we don't have. I mean, at least the guise of Iraq was the dream team around Bush.
Exactly.
And Rumsfeld, Cheney, George Tenet, Colin Powell, Susan Rice. I mean, I'm sorry,
Condoleezza Rice.
That this was argued. It doesn't get better than this. We certainly know we don't have that capacity in government. Hegseth couldn't answer basic questions yesterday. It's also coy and uninteresting. The only stop in this, because of course Trump doesn't think sophisticated about things like this. Because again, if you want to negotiate, explain why Israel killed the top negotiator. Targeted kill, people. Targeted kill, right? So if I'm skeptical about Netanyahu's motivations, forgive me, but I've had 2 years of someone, telling the United States that he has everything under control, and it looks otherwise. So that piece, I don't believe we have U.S. intelligence that says otherwise, and in terms of the imminency, and we had a good thing. We might have been able to get a good thing again, but the idea that we're about to do this again should be sobering to most Americans.
By the way, we should also, foreign policy unfortunately doesn't matter much to people when they vote. Part of Trump's campaign unequivocally was, I don't get involved in any foreign
I'm going to get out of them.
Can we go back a little bit? There are about 3 people in the United States who care about the War Powers Act, and unfortunately, it never includes the President of the United States, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. Reagan violated it with El Salvador, Clinton with Kosovo, Obama with Libya, but it basically says unless the United States is attacked, which we haven't been, the president must consult, in quotes, whatever that means exactly, within a very small period of time when making a decision to launch weapons in other places. There's no indication, again, this is going to happen, but the only reason I'm raising it is for those Democrats particularly who are savaging, as they should, Trump about this. They got to look in the mirror and realize every Democratic president has been as violative of the War Powers Act of 1973 as the Republicans have been. That's fair, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the process issue is important, but I think the substantive issue is more important.
Well, maybe so, but I'll tell you, when you're going to war, a country, when you haven't been attacked, it seems to me that you want the men and women who most immediately represent you to be consulted, particularly since the law requires it. Can we play some other sound that is unbelievable? People didn't hear this. I'm sure you've all read there's a big split within MAGA about this. But the best evidence of this was Tucker Carlson is doing a little thing with Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas. Cruz obviously thinks it's a great idea going in there. Tucker Carlson, interestingly, thinks it's a disaster. Here's just a little bit, and I really would recommend to you watch the whole interview because it's great theater. First, you'll hear Carlson, and then Cruz having no idea what he's talking about. Here it is.
How many people live in Iran, by the way? I don't know the population. At all? No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple? How many people live in Iran? 92 million. Okay. Yeah. How could you not know that? I don't sit around memorizing population tables. Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government. Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant? Because if you don't know anything about the country... I didn't say I don't know anything about... Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran? They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, it's not even. You don't know anything about Iran. So actually, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran. You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government. You're the one who claims about the country. No, you don't know anything about the country.
Let me tell you, I can't believe it's come to the point where I'm praising Tucker Carlson.
We should also point out that we were roundly criticized for knowing nothing about Iraq and nothing about Afghanistan either. We didn't know much about Vietnam way back when.
I mean, it's
like we've learned nothing.
Right. It's so I watched that. Jim, can I ask you? Did you actually watch it in all its entirety?
No.
Okay, good. Because
it's much longer. It goes on.
It's like over an hour, and
I did not watch the whole thing.
I mean, obviously, I think it shows. I mean, as you said, it shows the split in MAGA between the America first. What does America first mean, right? So America first to the base, to the conservatives, like the Tucker Carlsons, the Marjorie Taylor Greene of the world is isolationism. It is we aren't venturing into Greenland. We aren't venturing into Iran. We aren't venturing into Canada. It is that the America first under Trump is whatever Trump wants is America first, right? So that is the split. Now, but remember, people like Ted Cruz have been around a long time pre-Trump. They've got opinions. And the regime change in Iran is consistent with a belief by a proportion of the Republican Party and others, it's not just the Republican Party, that the Middle East can be transformed by American intervention. It's a mythology because the evidence suggests otherwise. I mean, even the Arab Spring, which one could argue maybe was a grassroots effort, has not bred it. And I'm not, this idea that I'm happy about it. No, I'm not happy about it. I'm Lebanese American. I'm not happy about what's happening in Lebanon. But it's the cost of believing in the transformative powers of the United States in the Middle East is super, super high. And the idea that it's easy or that you can just do it or that you don't need to know anything about these countries and what's happening and the dynamics within these countries and their own domestic politics and the fact that most countries do not like being bombed by Israel or the United States. So however unpopular the military, the religious leadership is, I don't know if it's getting more popular, right?
Okay.
We're talking.
Think about Bush's polling after 9/11. Before 9/11, 50-50, barely won the election. After 9/11, 90%. People do not like their countries being attacked.
So what happens? So what happens now going forward? I mean, who meets with whom?
Donald Trump has to wait to hear from Laura Loomer. Then he'll decide if he's dropping a bomb on Iran.
There is a theory. There's a serious theory about that. Is there not? Did you mention that to Julia?
Well, what's the woman's name from Fox News? Gretchen Carlson.
Former
who's
Miss
a pretty
America.
serious commentator.
But she's very good. Yeah, she's a good.
She's really smart at Fox News. Said totally seriously on CNN the other night when Anderson Cooper asked her who's the primary advice giver that's leading Trump to lean towards dropping bombs on Iran, and he said that lunatic Laura Loomer.
And he's taken her advice before getting rid of that guy.
Well, they've dumped various people.
Yes.
Not just quite publicly, but also a number of the sort of envoys to Lebanon. In other words, lots of people have been replaced. It's understood as her. Remember, she is not only wackadoodle. I should be careful. She's not only sort of doesn't have content. She also is a well-known Islamophobe and a 9/11 truther. I mean, that's weird. Sorry for the thumbs up. And so I don't. Whether that's true or not, we know he's getting his advice from he's not getting his advice from the remaining experts in the national security community. And I do wonder what's going on with the Joint Chiefs. The Joint Chiefs, the last time they testified, seemed somewhat skeptical on this kind of engagement. But Hegseth, of course, was leaning in. As of June 19th, Thursday, June 19th, I don't think Trump's going to do it. I could be wrong. And it's a combination of that split in MAGA. It's the growing narrative that Trump is being led by Netanyahu on this, which he doesn't want. And I do think there are at least cautionary elements within the Defense Department on the military side that are probably drawing up plans and at least notifying people who will listen of what is likely to happen. He also is a creature of polls, and he knows
Unpopular.
Wildly unpopular. So the question is what off ramp is Iran going to give to Trump? And I would suspect that they are smart enough to be able to know to kiss the ring.
Well, they theoretically have said, we'll come to the White House to negotiate with you.
Right,
Let them show up at the White House over the weekend.
You pointed out, though.
That's a ring, right?
Yeah.
That's
I agree.
The ring. So this is like tariffs all over again. Sort of Trump puts himself, but this is more serious, puts himself in a corner because he's listening to people who don't know anything or who have agendas that are absolutely terrifying. I want people to like the the hawkish Iranian military effort is regime change, and just call it that. And then with no plan on the other side for a country that is, as we now know, 100 million people. This is not Libya, and it's not Syria. So I think just like the tariffs, people will start to figure out a way where he can claim victory, give him an off ramp, and hopefully we put this, we move forward, and then
we gotta go.
Yeah, we got to go.
Juliet, thanks for your thoughts. We really
Hopefully,
appreciate
no
it.
American boots on the ground in
Well,
Iran.
hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much, Juliet Kayyem. Appreciate it.
See you, Juliet. Thanks so much.
Bye, you guys. See you next week.
Okay, We've been speaking with Juliet Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, Faculty Chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Living to Learn in an Age of Disasters. Coming up after a quick break, it's Juneteenth. We'll check in with former Boston Mayor Kim Janey. The NAACP is Michael Curry, a distinguished professor of public policy and urban affairs at Northeastern, Ted Landsmark. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Maine Maritime Museum. Their new exhibit, Upon That Isle in Maine, the story and works of Chris Van Dusen, explores original artwork from the children's book author and his connection to the Maine coast. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
As we've mentioned, today is Juneteenth. It was June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after Abraham Lincoln gave his Emancipation Proclamation, that the final 250,000 enslaved Texans were officially told of their freedom after Union Major General Gordon Granger led a force of troops to Galveston, Texas. Juneteenth, the day dedicated to liberation and black joy. Here in Studio 3 to help us celebrate Juneteenth on BPR, Kim Janey, Boston's first black, first female mayor, currently president and CEO of Economic Mobility Pathways, a nonprofit dedicated to lifting people out of poverty through one-on-one career coaching, political advocacy, and specialized research. Mayor Janey, it's great to see you. Also, Ted Landsmark, an image of Ted being assaulted with an American flag during the Boston busing crisis.
So we spoke with all three of you, I think it was about 6 days after Donald Trump's election, and you were pretty prescient, anticipating what could happen with DEI getting cut back, with higher education crackdowns, with immigration. So let's start with ladies first here, Mayor Janey. Is this what you expected to see, or is it worse or better or what?
I think this administration was very clear about their plans coming in, and they are executing those plans. And so what we see, the dismantling of DEI and so many other things that are near and dear to the American people, we knew this going in. And so sadly, we see the dismantling of these initiatives.
You also, Ted, we were listening to it this morning back from, as Marjorie said, 6 days after the election. You were spot on the higher education front. Has it been worse than you expected, or is it just about what Donald Trump said he'd do?
It's about what he said he would do, which is worse than many people expected. I think within the higher education community, we knew that there would be some attacks on diversity and on the way universities do their outreach to local communities. But the speed with which the president has moved has been very disconcerting for many of our campuses and for the students on those campuses.
You know, Michael, I don't have to tell you how prescient you were unless you're dying to pat yourself on the back because we talk to you regularly. But I wanted to broach with you another concept that we talked to you, all three of you, about anticipatory obedience, which was the line Timothy Snyder from Yale captured, I thought, perfectly. And I have to say, whatever we are now, 6 months in, 5 months in, maybe 5 months in, I continue to be stunned how little courage so many people with power have exhibited in the face of this all-on assault from the Trump administration. Are you?
I'm not as surprised. I think the reason why is, for me, having been an activist since college, I was the head of my Black Student Union, and then I've been doing this sort of activism, social justice work since I was a teenager. I'd say there's one lesson I learned in all these years, which is there's various degrees of courage. And whether you're pushing a college campus to provide tenure for Black professors, Black and brown professors, or pushing them to recruit and retain more students of color, or you're challenging the Trump administration on policy, some people, we all show up differently. Some people have a higher level of risk that they're willing to accept to push back. So I think I'm realizing in this moment that it's frustrating to all of us when people don't speak up, stand up, live up to their words, their proclamations, their commitments, and we all will get frustrated. But I'm actually not surprised because I've seen it throughout my career.
You know, Ted, I'm not even clear what the agenda should be on Juneteenth. Is it to defend against the worst assaults on things that actually people, three of you and many others like you, have helped create, or is it to continue to make progress at a time when progress doesn't feel very achievable, at least to me?
We're in a pause, basically, where we need to do today some very serious assessments of what has worked and what hasn't worked in terms of DEI and moving forward to achieve levels of equity and fairness. And I think this year in particular, we need to be very strategic about how we're moving forward at this point, given the resources that are available to us.
Is that giving in a little bit to the Trump factions?
I think it's accepting the reality of where we are at this moment and where we're likely to be for the foreseeable future. Corporations are cutting back, universities are cutting back, public agencies are cutting back. And we're returning in some respects to a place where the country was in the 1950s and in the early 1960s, where organizations and individuals need to begin to come together to plan forward, to counter where we are at this moment, and also to plan forward.
You know, Mayor Kim Janey, you're working with people that are trying to get out of poverty, and they're the people that, if the president's big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, gets through, are going to be hit worse. I mean, the money's going to go to the most wealthy, and the big hit's going to come from the people who are struggling most. What do you hear from people that you work with about their peace of mind? I mean, this is going to be scary stuff.
It is. And I want to first lift up the fact that the families that we are working with, many of them are led by single women. These moms are doing incredible work to move themselves out of poverty. They are doing the hard work here. And they are operating now with a lot of fear. Many of the folks that we serve are immigrants from countries that are being targeted by this administration. They are in fear of ICE raids. They are in fear that they will be separated from other family members. And this isn't just the families that we work with. We have members of our staff who are also operating in this place of fear. And so trying to help folks understand how we move through this moment together and not turning on each other to get through to the other side, that we are hopeful that something better is on the other side. It's really, really difficult. It's hard enough just imagining being trapped in poverty and trying to climb, and then having all of these other attacks on you and your family, ones that could really put you in harm's way. It is really, really doing a lot of harm and disservice to the families that this administration, the federal administration, should care deeply about.
Well, especially the Haitian diaspora. We have a big Haitian population in Boston.
Second largest
in
America. And I think it's a second.
Okay.
This weekend, this weekend, knew more horrific news out of what life is like in Haiti. So it seems like it would be, I can't imagine.
You would think. And so why we continue to do the things that we know provide more harm and hurt people rather than the help that they need it's a mystery.
Well, I'm going to try to answer that because I'm so glad you two talked about one of my, I was going to say least favorite words in all this, fear, Michael Curry. I think the greatest, I was going to use the word success, the most effective thing Trump has done in his first 5 months is to spread fear into virtually every corner of our country, and it's paralyzing for a lot of people. I mean, being fearful, being scared it's very hard to act or do anything. You could say, I was just thinking, for example, Andrea Campbell, for example, the other day, came out with a good list of things people can do concretely if ICE shows up. And if you're observing what you can do when ICE shows up. But the one thing she can't counsel people about is fear. I mean, what do you do with people, whether it's a patient in one of the community health centers who said, I'm not bringing my kid in today because I'm worried he's going to get snatched or I'm going to get snatched? How do you address those issues? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. I think the reality is what I try to remind people is that we've seen this before. It only takes some of the anxiety away, some of the stress, because it is meant to inspire us to say our ancestors, and I specifically I'm talking about African Americans, but that's true for all people, right? People who come from countries where they came from countries of oppression, poverty, death, malnutrition, all those things. People come from really bad circumstances to get to this country, however they came. And sometimes just remembering that it was worse will give you encouragement that this too shall pass and we will overcome it at some point. We'll take losses, we'll lose lives, but we will enter it knowing that our ancestors had to bear a greater burden than we did. I think is a great way to start the movement to fight against this. I'm a firm believer, and I was with the governor this week, and she said, don't take our foot off the gas. We're lucky that we live in Massachusetts and we have an attorney general, a governor, a legislature, advocates, leaders like you have there with you now, and Ted and Kim, that we can fight back. We can actually resist. And when history catches up, the truth catches up to history, we'll be on the right side to talk about we defended LGBTQ rights. We defended immigrant rights. We didn't drive them into the shadows or drive them out of the country, that we fought against that we defended health and equity programs, that we defended justice for all and people with disability and women's rights. I just don't want us to cower and then hide on the other side of this situation and act as if we were fighting if we weren't. I think I'm encouraged by the governor's remarks that we in Massachusetts plan to fight.
That's Michael Curry. We're also joined by Ted Landsmark and former Mayor Kim Janey.
What'd you take away from yesterday's protest? Saturday's protest across the country.
There's a movement that supports equal rights and social justice, and that movement is ready to be mobilized. It needs to be focused on voting and on influencing legislators who can advocate for fairness in terms of the development of policy. I think it's a very good thing that people are willing to get back out on the streets. It takes a certain amount of courage to risk one's body in a demonstration. And For those of us who were fortunate to be able to do that during the civil rights movement, we look back, we know the risks that we took, and we can see the areas where we made some progress and where we fell short in that regard. And I think that there are new generations that are prepared to advocate for fairness and justice.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. You seem to be relatively positive about America's prospects at this time, despite what we're encountering. Am I reading you wrong?
I think that a lot of us are actually quite devastated at what has been happening over the past 6 months to a year. And we're trying to recover from that sense of devastation to figure out what the best steps are in terms of moving forward. We didn't get to this point merely because of 6 months of political activity. The people who are defending authoritarian regimes at this point have worked at it for years and years. They've been organizing politically for decades. They have had lists of people they want to serve on our courts. They've worked at the level of school boards and the like. And if we're going to be able to recover from all of that negative activity, we need to organize in a way where there's a recognition that it's going to take us a while to get back to, let alone proceed forward from the place we are in at this moment.
Do you think, Mayor Janey, do you think there are people who are in, let's call it the resistance, for lack of a better expression, who, where there's any evidence they have the ability to do what Ted was just describing? He was describing the Federalist Society coming up with a list of judges for the first round and the second round of Donald Trump, many of whom made it onto the court, helped assure the hard right that he was legit. Project 2025 essentially is playing out before our eyes every day. Does the other side ever do that kind of thing?
Here's the thing. I think we knew that Project 2025 was coming. He put it out there, and people voted and embraced that anyway. What's important to remember is that this isn't about one individual. It's not about one or even two terms of a presidency. This has been in the making for centuries. Yeah. It has been the essential fight in this country since its founding. And so the resistance that you see and the resilience that many of us have to have has also been around since the founding of this country. And we do need to be more strategic, as Ted has said. And we do need to fight, as Michael has said. We need to make sure that we're really clear about this. I think if we cower, if we give in, it's over. It's game over already. What I think those in power who are doing these things to hurt American people fail to realize, and it's this old quote, maybe it's an African proverb, I'm sure Michael can tell us its origins, but it says they tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. And I think that's the moment we are in right now. And so the question is, what are we going to harvest in the future? What seeds are we planting, and what are we going to harvest moving forward?
Michael, what do you think of what went on over the weekend with the protests? Obviously, there was Trump's military parade in D.C. as well, and there was the terrible killing of two legislators and their spouses in Minnesota. But
one legislator and a spouse.
A former legislator, yeah. One was a former legislator, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to take in. So two things I'll say to that. So one is I'm here in Fort Lauderdale with a basketball tournament for my son. So I've been jogging every morning, doing a 5K.
Wow.
And,
hot down there, isn't it?
It is hot, but I love it. I love it. And I jogged through the protesters, right? I had forgotten, and didn't, Fort Lauderdale as an example, whenever you come down here, there's a Trump caravan going by. So it was refreshing to see, the signs saying we haven't had a king since 1776. No kings. Right. And we want a country where people are free and have access. And it was the beauty of those signs, as I sort of jogged through those signs that morning, was what I needed. Right. It was the resistance that I've been hoping for. And I'll say this as sort of to your broader question as we think about Juneteenth. I sat in classrooms where they wanted me to know about Battle of Lexington, Concord in April 1775, where they wanted me to understand the Second Continental Congress in that same year, as we look at an anniversary for both, the Declaration of Independence in 1776. And I have to now say, as we have this conversation about Juneteenth, it was never just about Juneteenth. It was also about the New York Slave Rebellion in 1712, the Chesapeake Rebellion in 1730, the Gabriel's conspiracy in 1800, Denmark-Vesey plot in 1822, the Black Seminoles and Seminole Wars in 1835, John Brown, Nat Turner. We have so much history of resistance in this country that we've never talked about. And we focus on the end of slavery and Juneteenth, which we should celebrate. But shame on us if we don't unpack, open the box to true patriotism, that people fought for liberation, to make democracy real for all of us, not just Black folks. This is Black history, but this is American history. And if you are from Ireland, Lebanon, Israel, you should be digging into those crates to understand all of this history, not just the ones that was packaged for us in American history.
By the way, you three may not know that if we had a slogan over our door, it would say, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And you three are all violating So, Michael, sort of, we were almost out of time, but what is the hopeful thing that you seize upon, Ted Landsmark, to keep you going right now?
Our young people in our communities, people who've gone through workforce development, job training, an understanding of their history, identity, people on our campuses. Campus activism has always been at the center of many of our civil rights and social rights activities. So I look to what it is those of us who've been through this before can pass on to those young people so that they can carry forward with an agenda of social justice.
You have 30 seconds.
Same. I'll say young people, but I'll go to the other end of the spectrum and say our elders and ancestors. So where I have taken comfort in this from day one is that point that Michael made earlier. My people have been through worse. My people have been through worse. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together.
You want to take the last 30, Michael Curry?
Yeah, I'd say, and you both heard me say this before, I'm glad so many people are woke, but I'm loving that we got more insomniacs now. Right? We got 2 of them in the room. We just got more people who won't go back to sleep because they know the truth now. We got to turn that into policy. We got to turn that into action. So I think the future, the longer future is bright with more people understanding history and inequity in this country.
Hope the three of you will come back again soon. We really, really benefit from talking to you. Thanks so much, all three.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. We have been speaking with Kim Janey, Boston's first Black mayor, now president and CEO of Economic Mobility Pathways, the NAACP's Michael Curry, also CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, and distinguished professor of public policy and urban affairs at Northeastern, as well as director of their Kitty and Michael Dukakis Center for Urban and Regional Policy, Ted Landsmark. Kim and Ted and Michael, thank you all for coming in, and of course, have a great, happy Juneteenth.
Indeed.
Black mayor, now president and CEO of Economic Mobility Pathways, the NAACP's Michael Curry, also CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, and distinguished professor of public policy and urban affairs at Northeastern, as well as director of their Kitty and Michael Dukakis Center for Urban and Regional Policy, Ted Landsmark. Kim and Ted and Michael, thank you all for coming in, and of course, have a great, happy Juneteenth.
Indeed.
Okay. Coming up after this quick break, instead of our 2 More Things segment, we're doing one more thing today and listening to a story on protest music reported and produced by our BPR senior producer, Zoe Matthews. That's after this quick break. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
What happened after enslaved people were granted their freedom and not much else? Today, a former plantation in Alabama houses a new exhibit on that history.
We invite you to step into the shoes of these people who are living on the precipice of a change in history.
Hear that story and the latest on Iran on All Things Considered from NPR News.
today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Standish Village in Dorchester's Lower Mills, providing assisted living residents with programs designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. Learn more at standishvillage.com/programs. And Blythewald, with big, beautiful bamboo birds. 6 sculptures in the gardens, 15 to 30 feet tall, by artist duo The Mythmakers. Blythewald.org.
Welcome to BPR, Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Instead of our 2 More Things segment today, it's 1 More Thing. We're going to take a couple minutes to air a story reported by BPR senior producer Zoe Matthews about a folk musician making protest music for the modern anti-war movement and the young activists coalescing around fighting Trump's agenda.
Musician Carsey Blanton stopped in Harvard Square for a show at the Sinclair recently, billed as a fundraiser for the Middle East Children's Alliance. Blanton, a self-described anti-Zionist Jew and a socialist, says she just does what most artists do. She writes what she knows.
I'm sort of quintessentially American in that my mom is Jewish, my dad comes from a long line of Appalachian rednecks, and my whole family's musical. So there's always been a lot of different music around me. And really, like all American music is music of the working class. It just eventually gets sucked up into capitalism.
Blanton's music reflects her own revolutionary optimism, an attempt to provide a soundtrack to bolster a popular leftist movement, activated in part by a crackdown on pro-Palestinian speech.
We're trying to open a window for all these young people who are like doing these incredible encampments and hunger strikes to say like, you can dedicate your whole life to this work and it's a good life.
Students at schools across the country engaged in hunger strikes this year to protest the United States' continued funding of Israel's military, in a war they see playing out in real time on social media. At the show, Hannah Dabani, a recent MIT graduate who faced suspension for her pro-Palestine protest on campus, was tabling for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. She sees an increased connection to injustice writ large as the Trump administration targets immigrants and the working class.
A lot of people are looking at a brazen, very clear billionaire agenda, and they're like, wait a second, something is really wrong. So in a lot of ways, I think that Trump has kind of reignited some struggle. So if you're running down in the panic and you're wondering if you can trust, well, it's socialism or barbarism, it's the people or Elon Musk. I said it's socialism or barbarism, it's the people or Elon Musk. Your choice.
Disenchantment with establishment politics is very pronounced for people under 30. The most recent Harvard Youth poll found that just 1/3 of young people approve of either party in Congress. And nearly half of young Americans say they're barely getting by financially.
Increasingly, young people are feeling like the options that we have are limited, if not shrinking.
That's Davin McQueen, who recently graduated with their master's degree and is now teaching at a local community college.
There is this idea that feeling a sense of passion about injustice in the world is something that you do when you're young. And I think what's happening now is that injustice doesn't just like go away. You don't age out of it.
That blend of revolutionary grit and aspirational hope is a through line for Blanton. She's making protest music for a new generation.
So I'm trying to like make a little oasis of hope where we can like experience together the idea that there's a future.
For GBH News, I'm Zoe Matthews.
Congrats. Congratulations to
That's
Zoe.
really great,
That
yeah.
was great. These poor kids, they have no money, no hope. They have to have an idea that there's a hope ahead. Oh, my God.
How about
The
two older adults? No
know.
money, no hope. Well, we
know.
have money, but no hope anyway.
And the woman that talked about the music business being sucked up into capitalism. I mean, that is
That was great.
so
It
true.
was really great.
People were talking about the fact that where are the people doing the protest music in this time of at least among some, upset about Donald Trump. But we found it right here. Thank you very much to Zoe Matthews. That was a great piece. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, 3 puppeteers leading a showcase for Black artists tomorrow night. We're talking about one of the oldest art forms known to man and how these 3 and others are taking the medium to new frontiers. Yes, puppets on the radio. Well, we're also on
We
YouTube.
had a juggler on the radio
YouTube,
once, so we
I
can
think
do
we can
this.
pull it off. I'm Marjorie Egan. He is Jim Browdy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Puppeteers are up next on Boston Public Radio. We'll be right back after the 1 o'clock news.
One individual can make a difference. A group of individuals can make a big difference. GBH is founded on listener support, and it's not about how much you give. It's about how many people get involved. Be the next to make a difference at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. NEBG.org. And Moonbox Productions, presenting the 4th Annual Boston New Works Festival, celebrating new original plays by local playwrights, June 26th to the 29th at the Calderwood Pavilion and the BCA. Tickets at bostontheaterscene.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of BPR. Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline is home to a creative residency currently led by a number of Black puppeteers. We'll speak with Ash Wingfield, Tanya Nixon-Silberg, and Charlotte Louis Gaspard and experience some live puppetry, that's right, on the radio and the YouTube stream from Studio 3.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then I wait all week for Thursdays. It's Thursday, and am I the a-hole day? This week's prompt involves a husband's inartful plating of meals for his wife. She's fed up with a sloppy presentation. Is it too much to ask for a meal to be served like it would be at a restaurant, even not a very good restaurant, even like a high school cafeteria? Or is she being an ungrateful wife? Who's the bigger jerk, the sloppy plater or the prissy partner? Weigh in or text 877-301-8970 on the third hour of BPR and 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Israel is vowing to retaliate after the largest hospital in southern Israel was struck by an Iranian missile. Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba reported injuries. It sustained heavy damage. The facility was one of several sites across Israel struck today. Israeli leaders say they will intensify attacks on strategic targets in Iran. President Trump has not ruled out U.S. military strikes on Iran, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told reporters while visiting Beersheba today that American forces have already been helping in other ways.
They're participating in the protection of the skies over Israel and its cities with THAAD missile batteries that are in Israel, with Aegis ships that are on the shore of Israel, with their pilots that are fighting alongside our pilots to knock out drones.
Iran's state media say the missile was not meant to hit a hospital, but a military target nearby. Well, there's a growing divide on Capitol Hill over whether President Trump should authorize a strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports some lawmakers are calling for a strong response, while others are warning that the U.S. is risking being pulled into a broader conflict without a clear strategy.
Republican Congressman Mike Lawler says Israeli airstrikes are just the beginning and U.S. involvement may be necessary.
If that is what is required to finish the job,
I fully support it.
Representative Adam Smith is a Democrat from Washington State.
If the decision were to be made to do that, I think Congress should, under the Constitution, our approval should be required.
At the heart of the debate is whether a president needs congressional approval to launch a strike. Past administrations have leaned into the authorization for use of military force, a power that was first used in 2001 in Afghanistan. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
North Korea has fired multiple rounds of rocket artillery westward into the sea. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Seoul. The launch comes a day after South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. held joint air drills.
The South's military said the North fired about 10 rounds from multiple rocket launchers near Pyongyang. South Korean media reported they were 240-millimeter rocket artillery shells. Ukrainian and Western intelligence say the North has provided those weapons to Russia for use against Ukraine. North Korea and Russia marked 1 year since they signed a treaty that they used to justify assisting each other's militaries. South Korea called on Moscow and Pyongyang to halt what they say is illegal cooperation. Russian media reported this week that North Korea will send thousands of combat engineers and sappers to clear landmines and rebuild infrastructure in Russia's war-torn Kursk region. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. An investigation is underway after the crash of a small plane in Beverly that's left one person dead and another injured. Happened this morning. The plane crashed near an industrial park soon after taking off from Beverly Regional Airport. The city's police chief, John LaLasher, held a news conference on the crash just a little while ago.
As you can tell, it's an industrial park. It's a holiday. There's not a lot of businesses open right now. We're going to go through footage when we can with the various businesses when they open, bring some people in, and then maybe obviously do some follow-up tomorrow.
The identities of the two people who were inside that plane have not yet been released. The Central Mass town of Shrewsbury is the first place in the state to have mosquito sample test positive for West Nile virus. Mass Department of Public Health said that the virus was detected in a sample collected in Shrewsbury late last week. Public Health Commissioner Robbie Goldstein says mid-June is earlier than they typically first find West Nile virus-infected mosquitoes in the Commonwealth. There were 19 human cases of West Nile last year when the first mosquito samples to test positive were collected in late June. The Department of Health says there's been no evidence thus far this year of Eastern equine encephalitis. There were 4 cases of triple E in 2024. In sports, the NBA Finals. It's OK City at Indiana tonight. Oklahoma leads the 3-2. A win could give them the championship. We are at 86 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru and its retailers, partnering with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society this June to give blankets and messages of hope to patients facing cancer. Learn more at Subaru.com/care.
Okay, welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browning and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for Live Music Friday and Ask the General Manager of the MBTA, Phil Eng. That means you can call and ask him all your questions and complain about the tea. Ask the Governor. Maura Healey's going to be with us on June 25th. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again. And now, puppets on the radio. I know it's odd, but stay with me.
Well, we're on youtube.com/GBH News.
Excellent point.
So people can watch us on YouTube.
The form of storytelling that first came about when humans were still living in caves, I am told, continues to grow and evolve alongside us thousands of years later. In the spirit of full disclosure, we were sort of immortalized, that may be a bit strong,
That's right.
as puppets
That's
by
right.
Ryan Landry and the Gold Dust Orphans at a couple of his Christmas shows. But over at the Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline, it's year 5 for a creative residency specifically tailored to Black artists who attend from around the country to develop their craft outside the typical predominantly white spaces. The 6-month program culminates in a show that's tomorrow, 8 p.m., at the Joan and Edgar Booth Theater at BU, Boston University. For tickets and info, you can go to puppetshowplace.org, puppetshowplace.org. Joining us now are puppeteers Ash Wingfield, great to have you. Tanya Nixon-Silberg. Hello, Tanya.
I'm so happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. We think. We'll find out soon. And Charlotte Lilly Gaspard. Charlotte Lilly, it's great to have you, too. Welcome to all three of you.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. You know, I'm a second generation. I took my kids to the Puppet Showplace Theater. Now my grandchildren are going there. It's a wonderful place. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. So tell people, Ash, who don't know about it, what's the Puppet Theater?
Oh, absolutely. Puppet Showplace Theater is a local institution. We've been here right across from the Brookline Village Tea Stop for over 50 years. We just celebrated our 51st birthday this past June, and it is a place for families, for children, for adults, for everyone to come and experience the magic of puppetry. It's really just the best place. It's a tiny 100-seat theater. You come in, you get an intimate experience, and you get to enjoy something wonderful with your family.
So, Tanya, what's this creative residence deal that I mentioned a minute ago?
Sure. It's called the Creative Residency for Black Puppeteers. It started as a brainchild between myself and then Puppet Showplace Theater's artistic director, Roxy Myram. It came out of us, me kind of being in the quiet and chaos of 2020, loving puppetry and wanting to be in community with other Black puppeteers. And so we started this residency, and we had 6 puppeteers at the first time, and then we just keep having it over the last 5 years.
You know, Charlotte, what's with puppets and their appeal? Not just to you as artists, but why are we so... We were talking this morning, Marjorie and I, and how much we're drawn, not just for our kids or her grandkids, but for us as adults. What's the allure to you and to us?
Well, the thing about puppetry is that the reality that we've forgotten in modern digitized life is that everything is alive and everything has a story. And so when we make a puppet show, there's all different types of puppets. There's stringed puppets, rod puppets, tabletop, all these shadows, which is my personal passion. But when you make a story, a piece of theater, using living objects, you actually connect with your ancient roots. The way that we lived before the last 30 years of the internet and the last 100 years of cinema and television in every home, you actually connect on a deeper level, in my opinion.
Do you subscribe, Tanya, to that same thesis?
Absolutely.
You do?
I think about puppetry also being as a space for telling stories, but also for liberation. If you can bring an inanimate object to life, you can bring other types of things to life, like joy, like justice, like really just making space for so many people.
How about you, Ash?
I'm sorry. Charlotte touched on that, the whole idea of there's a whole bunch of different, it's not just marionettes or hand puppets, but there's all sorts of variety at the Puppet Showplace Theater.
Yeah, absolutely. We have
like
everything.
shadow puppetry. I've never even heard of.
Lots of shadow puppetry. Charlotte Lilly has performed there. Tanya's come and has performed hand puppetry. We have tabletop bunraku style, which is a Japanese form. We have so many different styles, and all of them come to our stage and beyond. And we're so lucky to be at the booth tomorrow to see just a small snippet of all of those different styles.
So, Charlotte Lilly, you were Marjorie was honest enough to say she has no idea what shadow puppetry is.
I don't. I have an idea, right? You make a shadow with a puppet.
So what is it?
So it's very funny because a lot of people, when I say I'm a shadow puppeteer, they think that I use my hands contorted in fun ways to make animals on the wall. But what
you don't?
I don't. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Horrible.
I know. No, what it is intricate paper cuts, and we use light shown onto the paper cuts, sometimes with moving joints, and this is how we tell our story. And just as a play might have the characters as actors and set pieces, shadow puppetry you can hand cut out of paper and cardstock your set, your characters, and tell any kind of story. I sort of describe it as caveman cartoons, and it is an ancient form, which dates back thousands of years to traditions in China and Indonesia and India. All have historical, ancient styles of
and I
shadow
assume
puppetry.
you can't do shadow puppetry in a room where there's light like this is, but you do have some of the shadow puppet. Can you show us what you brought?
Yes, for those, since we are in the radio, I will tell you
we're on
that
YouTube too.
Oh, great. Wow. So you can tune into YouTube and see that I brought a few shadow puppets. So these I hand cut with an X-Acto blade. I'm holding up a character of a bird, and to my point with shadow puppetry, even though this doesn't have any moving joints, in the gesture of the wings, you can understand that this bird is flying. And so if I were to shine a bright light on this and we were in a less bright room, you would see the shadow on the wall. Also, we can use scale. So I could make this bird be a
Really
huge
big,
shadow that fills the wall. Or if I move the shadow, the puppet close to the wall, it will be a smaller puppet. I also brought a jellyfish, which is a mix of paper cut, but then also some lace. Plastic lace and ribbon. And so when this jellyfish is floating through space, the light and shadow will pick up these moving parts of the ribbon.
So I know nothing about this, obviously, but do you have to both hold the light and hold the puppet, or do you coordinate with the person with the light?
It depends on the show. Sometimes I do solo shows and I hold the light in one hand, I hold the puppet in the other, but I also work with other puppeteers. We sometimes have a standing light, and we also use overhead projectors. If you remember those old-timey classroom devices where transparencies were used for lectures in the 80s, 90s, we also use those to do shadow puppetry. And with that, you just use the flatbed for your images.
So, Tanya, how'd you get into this?
It came out of actually playing with my kid.
Yeah.
I know a lot around social emotional learning. I realized that my child, when having really big feelings, would talk to their dolls and talk to their stuffed animals. And so I would pick up the puppet and say, "What's going on? Why are you so upset?" And my kid would actually say, "I'm mad at mommy because they didn't let me do this." And so it really started me on that journey. And then I went to Puppet Showplace Theater. I brought my kid
you're a
there.
local.
Dorchester. I grew up in Dorchester. I brought my kid to Puppet Showplace Theater and just saw the magic of that, saw how they got into the story. And then, the artistic director at the time said, "Have you ever held a puppet before?" I was like, "Yes." And then held it up, and then they were like, "Okay, let's make a show together." And so we were able to develop My Night in the Planetarium. That's through a story by Inosanto Nagara.
Tell us about that, My Night in the Planetarium.
Yeah, sure. So My Night in the Planetarium is actually the stage is a pop-up book. And so I use a hand puppet. It's a very short puppet. It's on a table. And I tell the story of Inosanto being in Indonesia. It's the message is about how art can make life, how art can make the world more fair. And it talks a lot about a lot of really hard issues that folks really can dive into now. Kids can understand justice on a very, very visceral level, and they can get into the story and think, "Oh, maybe I can make a show based on my art. Maybe I can make art that's going to change the world. Maybe my art is going to help change the minds of folks that are not in alignment with me."
One of our producers says you know somebody by the name of Mildred. Does that ring a bell with you, or do you know who that is or not?
Yes.
Who the hell is Mildred?
So Mildred. Okay. So Mildred is
Mildred. Hey, Mildred.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be on the radio. Okay, so for you all that can't see me, I'm a beautiful black woman. I am Mildred Johnson. I live in the Bronx, New York, in the 1950s. I'm a domestic worker, and I came to life from a person named Alice Childress. She wrote a book, and all of my stories are in there. She loves me.
Oh, wow.
Did you create that? Wow. Did you create Mildred?
Okay. So,
I should have asked Mildred. Let me do that again. Mildred, who created you?
Oh, well, I'd like to think that the world created me. But also, Tanya did. Tanya went and she asked the estate to bring my stories to life. So here I am talking to all of you, and I'm here on the radio. This is just so exciting. You have any more questions for me? Because I can talk all day.
Well, I have a question related, but it's to you, Ash, because this is something that's not. This is a Zoom thing, right? So people could, because you're both New Yorkers, I think, right? Yes. Yeah. So people could be doing this from all around the country.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So the Creative Residency started as a virtual program, and it originally was a 2-month program. In the middle of COVID, everything was on Zoom, and it was a way for people to be in community with each other. This year, we've expanded it to the 6-month program, which is still virtual, but it means that we're able to make connections with Black puppeteers all across the country. And so we have applications from folks from all over. We have folks from Chicago, from Maryland, from Baltimore as part of this specific cohort. But then, of course, we have community with all of the other 20 puppeteers that have been part of this program. I participated back in 2023 as a participant, and I'm very grateful to be the coordinator this year. And it's just been an awesome opportunity to create that community.
So how'd you get...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, how'd you get into the puppetry world?
Fully by accident. I was in school. I was doing an arts admin internship, and they sent me to do a workshop with someone who turned out to be Basil Twist, who's a world-renowned MacArthur Grant awardee puppeteer. And I walked into a room, and we were playing with fans and smoke and silk and figuring out how to make parachutes and make things fly. And I said, this is weird and cool. I want to do more of it. And he kind of kept me, and I moved to New York from there, and people kept hiring me, and that's great.
Has puppetry basically been a white thing through the ages, or no?
Well, no. I think it's, historically, it's been a global phenomenon. I think everyone, we can see from thousands of years ago, there's evidence in India and Indonesia and Japan of puppetry. I think in the U.S., there is the idea that it's a white institution, and so oftentimes Black people don't feel like they have access to it. But I think that it is not. It is a global phenomenon, experience.
Yeah, I think we mentioned before talking about playing with your hands, Charlotte Lily. Or socks. It's something I think kids do with themselves when they're little. But this seems to be part of. You're all artists in a bunch of areas. I read people are doing. I forget which one of you is doing the costumes and yeah. Tell us about that. This is part of a whole big artistic career that you have.
It's true, and similar to Ash, I accidentally got into puppetry as well. I was a costume designer and playwright, and then someone commissioned me to make some shadow puppets for a music project, and I fell in love, and here we are 10 years later. But to speak to puppetry and it being assumed that it's sort of a white thing, I think it's a global thing. I think all of our ancestors, no matter where our people originally hail from, played with costuming and their bodies and objects and dolls to tell their stories. And it's just sort of a symptom of, living under hundreds of years of white supremacy and slavery and enslavement that we've sort of lost touch with that idea. Yeah. But it is all of our birthright.
That's Charlotte Lily Gaspard, and Ash Wingfield is with us. Tanya Nixon-Silberg is with us, all under the umbrella of the Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. at the Joan and Edgar Booth Theater. How rude. And Mildred, my apologies. Mildred Johnson, right?
Yes.
Mildred I'm
Johnson.
Sorry about that, Mildred.
I think she was annoyed.
And the Joan, wouldn't you be? John and Edgar Booth Theater at Boston University. For tickets and info, you go to puppetshowplace.org. So, Mildred, what's going to happen tomorrow night at 8 o'clock?
Well, tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, there are going to be so many different shows. There's going to be shadow puppets. There's also going to be moi, I'll be there. There are also going to be just beautiful. I would love for Ash to name the characters of the people. It would be great if you can name the puppeteers.
Goodness me.
Go ahead, friend.
I'll jump in since I am the
project
project mentor, which means that the last 6 months I've met with all of these artists one-on-one every month to help them with their artistic processes. Wow. So we have William P.K. Carter, who's based out of New York Central Valley, who will be doing a giant wearable hand and rod puppet. We have Chelsea D. Harrison from Washington, D.C., who will be doing a mix of shadow puppetry and other stuff I don't want to give away, doing a piece called Sheila and the Amazons about matrilineal femme power. We have Fatima Sek, who hails out of Boston, who did a project using bookmaking and natural dyes to bring to life a story called My Name is Harriet. We have Brett Swinney, who hails from Chicago, who made a giant wearable puppet that's interacting with a string puppet. His project's called Black Guy AI. And we have Kalisha Thorpe Price from Maryland, who's doing a reimagined Anansi tale about a spider who's a trickster and a crocodile.
Oh, okay. So this is for kids and grown-ups.
Yeah, so I think the whole evening is for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think of the cohort, we have some folks who are specifically geared towards family audiences, and we have folks who are geared towards all ages. I think in general, puppetry is an experience for anyone of any age. But tomorrow especially, bring your kids, bring your friends. It's really going to be a really special night.
So, Mildred Johnson, I want to talk to you for a second. I want to be honest here. I I did some research on the three people who are here with you, and I've heard good things and bad things about Tanya. So you probably know her a little bit better than the rest of us. What would you, be honest with me, what do you think of Tanya as a person?
How about I let Tanya speak for herself?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Go ahead, girl. All right. Tanya Nixon-Silberg is an amazing artist. She runs an organization called Little Uprisings, all about social justice and young kids. She is developing a new show called Like One of the Family, featuring moi. And she is very excited to be a part of this cohort. I've been a part of it for the last 5 years as a community curator, and being able to be in community with these folks has been lifeblood for me.
Okay, how old is your daughter now?
My kid is now 12.
She's now 12 because she's still pretty young.
They
So
are
I remember
12,
in one of the pieces I read about you, she talking to you about her little friends, and you said, "Well, I'm not one of your little friends," and she was insulted. She must be very happy now to see her mom in the puppet world.
Yeah, so my kid is amazing. And yes, they are. I think they get to the point where they're like maybe around 5 or 6, maybe 7. And then there's a drop off for puppetry, right? And I'm hoping that once they get into like the teenage years and they know that like the weird stuff of puppetry, it can be still like gathered, then I hope that they get back into it.
Joan watching on YouTube says the hand art imagery and creativity are awesome here. Sheila watching on YouTube, what a beautiful and creative way for artists to express themselves in the world around them. It's truly magical. Earlier in the show, we were talking to two people who were sort of, in most cases, regulars here around Juneteenth, and we were obviously talking about the fact that this year is different from the year before and the year before, particularly starting in January of this year, when everything that is not white, straight, and male is sort of no good, and white, straight, male is all perfect. How does that affect what you do or how the audience receives it, do you think, Ash? The environment in which you're performing?
Sure. I mean, I think art generally is in conversation with what's happening in the world, both politically and just community-based wise. So I think there is, in some ways, the art that we are called to make is influenced by what we are seeing and visualizing, what's happening around the globe, what's happening in this country. And I think, and I don't know if it's necessarily different for the audience, but I do hope that for certain pieces, like My Night in the Planetarium, that are speaking to what does it mean to be a revolutionist, what does it mean to stand up for justice, that some folks might be thinking about things in a slightly different way. And puppetry is one particular way to be able to access those kinds of conversations.
Do you think about things in a slightly different way, Charlotte Lilly?
Oh, certainly. I'm an adult who wears glitter to work and paper cuts to tell fantastical stories in which we can all be heroic. I do think that the political climate is, if anything, just a reminder how special it is what we do, and that every time someone, artist or otherwise, decides that they're going to tell their story and that it's worth telling and that they're going to believe that their perspective and their experiences are valuable, it inspires others. And we live in a world that loves to divide us and tell us we're different and that this person is important and this person is not important. And I think when we're really telling our stories the way that we're all called to, especially the people in this room who I have had the pleasure of working with so intimately these last 6 months, when we tell our stories, we inspire and empower others to know that their stories are also valuable. And that's one of the most beautiful things about this program.
Well, this has been really. I'm going back to being in the dark room. When you're a little kid with the socks on the wall. Didn't you ever do that when you were a kid, Jim?
I did it quite well, actually. Since you asked, since Tanya was honest about her skills, I'll be honest about mine. I was
been
really
fun
good at
to talk to you all. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to give all the info on tickets and stuff in a second. We've been speaking with Ash Wingfield, Tanya Nixon-Silberg, and Charlotte Lilly Gaspard with the Creative Residency for Black Puppeteers special show tomorrow night at Boston University's Joan and Edgar Booth Theater. For tickets and info, go to puppetshowplace.org. And that's where you can go to find out everything else that's going on at the Puppet Showplace too, which is a magical place. If you haven't been there, it's really great for grown-ups as well as kids. Thank you all for coming in.
You were rude too. How about Mildred Johnson?
Oh gosh, Mildred!
Really?
I'm sorry.
Interrupted you, but you were doing so great that I didn't want to do it. But I was going to say something.
Please.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the future of Black puppetry.
Please.
It's all about the stories that we need to tell. It's all about the stories that are about joy, that are about truth, that are about struggle, that encompasses all the experiences of being Black here in America and across the world. So this Puppet Showplace Theater, the creative residency for Black puppeteers, is the starting point for us to do this. We hope that other institutions do this as well, because the stories need to be out there. And so if you wanted to support this type of work, also go to puppetshowplacetheater.org and donate, because puppets are great for liberation, and we need it all.
Mildred,
Fabulous.
that was beautiful. Thank you.
You're A-okay, Mildred. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for not calling on you sooner.
Good luck
Mildred.
tomorrow.
Okay,
Come
once
back
again,
you all. That was great.
puppetshowplace.org for information on what's going on at BU, the Joni Ledger Booth Theater tomorrow night, and what is going on all the time at the Puppet Showplace in Brookline. Thank you again for coming in. Coming up after this quick break is a wife setting expectations too high when she admits to getting frustrated when her husband plops his homemade meals on her plate, just shoves them on there, mixing everything up. The peas that are underneath the meat, and she can't find the fish because they're covered in lettuce. No special attention or presentation whatsoever. This is our Am I the A-hole segment, which we're always embarrassed to tell when we have guests here, but that's
You
what
didn't
we're
seem
talking about.
embarrassed at all, actually.
Okay, your calls and text next, BPR 89788. What's the number again?
I'm not telling you.
Okay.
877-301-8978.
Thank you.
We've only had the same number for 14 years.
We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
What happened after enslaved people were granted their freedom and not much else? Today, a former plantation in Alabama houses a new exhibit on that history.
We invite you to step into the shoes of these people who are living on the precipice of a change in history.
Hear that story and the latest on Iran on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow with live flamenco music. And ask the general manager of the Tea, Phil Lang, will be there from, I think, 1 to 2. Am I right about that?
I believe so, yes.
To take your questions and ours about the state of the tea. Welcome once again to Marjorie's favorite weekly segment, Am I the A-hole? This week's entry comes, this is a good one, by the way. This entry comes to us via The Guardian. A wife, Lindsay, writes in and asks, should my husband stop slapping food on my plate so artlessly? Here's the context. These two have been married for 25 years. Lindsay is the primary cook in their relationship, but her husband, of course, his name is Jim.
It's Jim. Makes it easy this week.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll occasionally step in and cook when she's working late and needs a hand. The problem is this, according to her. When it comes to his meal presentation, Jim allegedly isn't much of a showman.
Jim.
Excuse me. His dinners end up looking slapped together, she says, often because he's literally slapping them together on a plate. Here's what Lindsay wrote. When Jim makes curry, it's dolloped with the precision of a toddler doing finger painting. In his defense, Jim explains he's not a chef. He's a hungry husband who's ready to enjoy his work. He writes, when it comes to spooning out the meal, it's like a big relief. I'm free from cooking and just have to get the food over the finish line and onto the plate. So the number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. Who's the a-hole? Is it husband Jim for not taking better care to cater to his wife's mostly modest expectations? She doesn't want all the crap food on top of all the other food. Or is it wife Lindsay, for example, for making this an issue when she should be appreciating the home-cooked meal her husband has toiled over on her behalf? Again, the number is 877-301-8970. Who is the a-hole,
Okay,
Marjorie?
Clearly, and as I said, it works out perfectly this week, the a-hole is the husband whose name is Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, just close your eyes for a minute and imagine. You've got this nice, say you've got a nice piece of fish. You got a nice piece of meat.
You don't like fish.
And you've got everything shoved in one. You got mashed potatoes shoved all over it. You get the sauce shoved all over it. She says he can't even bother to wipe out the circumference around the plate so there's not like food like sliding off the side of the plate. Listen to what he says he does.
Jim?
Yes, Jim. He says, do I gently nestle the salmon onto a pillow of salad?
Don't read like that.
No. I just whack it on. That's what he says. I just whack it on. He whacks it on. I mean, this is not really the
What's
approach.
wrong with whacking it on?
To dinner. Well, he talks about how home cooking is supposed to be charming, rustic, and real, which is my style. I would say that the average rustic home cook is not whacking the food on the plate and shoving everything in one place. I mean, the issue is, if you're going to do something, I hate to be sexist about it, but lots of people think that women are the ones that are doing the cooking and men are the ones that are always asking what's for dinner. But if you're going to do, and that's great, that Jim is cooking a dinner occasionally, you don't want to make it look like it's one big mess on your plate. Think about what it looks like when you're going to eat it, right?
Am I allowed to respond to this?
The vegetables over here,
Yeah.
you have the starch over there, the rice, the potato, whatever it is, and you have the entree or the main course.
Are you one of these? You're one of these people that doesn't like your food touching. Like you don't like the peas touching the meatloaf, touching the mashed potatoes.
No, that's not true. I like them to mix up, but I want to mix them up myself.
Okay, fine.
Jim.
So the answer, Marjorie's position, for obvious reasons, is Jim is the a-hole.
Jim.
Thank you.
Jim.
I believe that most of us, that's Juan or whatever his name is, Miguel or whoever, Julian, whoever he is. In any case, listen to what Lindsay, who is clearly the a-hole, the wife, says. The peas will be in the gravy, and the sausages will be precariously placed on top of the mash and the vegetable. She says, I'm not fussy, and I don't really have issues with food touching, even though she does. I'm going to read you a whole paragraph from this loser. Food sliding off one side of the plate isn't fun to eat. Neither is having to pick the vegetables out from under the meat. It hinders the dining experience because, look, get this, it feels as though your food is trying to make a break for it.
Yeah, I love that.
Our daughter Amanda...
Your food trying to escape.
Our daughter Amanda called Jim's attempt at presenting food abstract expressionism, which I thought was funny. So, who is the a-hole? The wife who is complaining because her husband, who is cooking late because she's late home, and even though he cooks a fine meal, apparently she doesn't complain about the meal. He does slap the stuff on the plate. Or is the a-hole the wife who is talking about looking a gift horse in the damn mouth, is complaining about not. By the way, if the food is mashed together, you know what you do if you don't like it? You separate it and then you eat it.
What are you going to do? Separate each pea from underneath the
I have
mess
done that more than
sitting...
once. I've done pea separation on many occasions. It's called
well,
PS.
we had some texters, and a few of them are with you, Jim.
Yeah.
Hi, Dorothy from Bellrica. The wife is the a-hole. She's unappreciative.
Exactly.
Send the husband to me, says Dorothy from Bellrica. And then somebody else says the wife is an a-hole. I have a laundry list of complaints about my partner, but cooking for me isn't one of them. But listen to this one. This is from a husband. It is important, says husband, to set expectations low. Otherwise, you might actually have to do something. I made the error of making the wife a cappuccino in the morning once, and now it is expected every day. It is an a-hole move, but it's manly.
You know what's great? I love when a man refers to the person to whom he's partnered.
The wife.
The wife. The wife. Anonymous texter says, picky eaters are a-holes. across the board. In a moment of seriousness here, I know it's because the guy's
here's the
Jim.
thing.
You're upset about
Here's
this.
the-
Is ridiculous.
Okay. How hard
he
is
cooks
this?
the meal.
That's right. He knows that this drives the wife crazy.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to pick up the piece of fish or the meat or whatever it is, it's a vegetarian dish, and just place it in one place and,
You want an honest
get
answer?
a big spoon
You want an honest
and
answer?
put the vegetables someplace else and a big other spoon and put the...
When you cook a meal,
Yeah.
you wouldn't know this because you don't cook much.
I don't cook much.
Slapping it on the plate is a very satisfying behavior that most people, other than Lindsay, would appreciate.
He says he whacks it on the plate.
Well, whacks it
There's
on
a
the
certain
plate, slaps it
violence
on the
here.
plate.
There's a certain I'm cooking dinner and, shove it on the plate.
Listen
and
to
you
this
take it and
woman.
eat it.
We're going to get to your calls in a second. To say she's an ingrate, here's what she says. She's imagining what he would say. Darling, I made this for you. Oh, no, pardon me. She would say to him, she says, darling, I made this for you. When Jim cooks, is Lindsay speaking, his plate says, here, eat.
Exactly.
And what is wrong with here, eat?
Well, he's doing it in a way that's kind of hostile toward his wife. I think that's the thing.
We
It's
would like to
hostile.
know, for people...
Whacking the food
For
is a
people
hostile
who
gesture,
whack
Jim.
their food on the plate after they cook it, we'd really like to hear from you.
Okay.
877-301-8970.
Let's start with Pat in Leominster. What do you think, Pat?
Hey, Pat, hello.
Well, I kind of have the opposite situation.
What's that?
I've given up doing presentation because my wife didn't appreciate it and would complain about it.
Exactly.
So now I put everything in separate bowls on the table and just let her serve herself.
Okay, hold on. Let's investigate this for a second, Pat. What was she complaining about in your quote-unquote presentation? What was wrong with it?
I was just spending too much time, bothering with presentation when, it was all ending up in the same place.
Well, that's a
I
very
think
good
a
point,
presentation
too.
effort by the husband is a lovely thing.
Now,
to
do you resent
Pat?
the fact that you went out of your way to present and it was totally unappreciated?
I did at first.
Sure, at first.
But,
So now you just whack it on?
This is a very grown-up kind of guy. Pat, you are really evolved. Thank you very much for the call. Good
Here's
luck
a
to you.
texter who says, why can't she just make her own plate from the food he prepared? Geez, lady, get a grip. This is not a big deal. That's right. She could circumvent this whole situation by getting her own big spoon.
Can I tell you what happened to me recently that I chose not
happened
to
to
share
you?
for you?
Yeah.
I went out, I did order meatloaf and peas and mashed potatoes. This is one of my favorite meals. It is. And I have to be honest, a few peas rolled under the meatloaf. And you know what I did? Let me explain to you what I did. I picked up the meatloaf with my fork, and with a spoon, I pushed the peas out from under the meatloaf, and the whacking together of my meal was it was unwhacked. in like a
we
second.
don't give a crap about your opinion.
Well,
I think that the person who's eating gets to do their own whacking. That's how I feel. The whacker should not be the person.
You think the wacky should be the person?
The wacky should get to be unwhacked so they can whack their own food if they want to.
By the way,
whack
can I
it.
say something else, even though it's not exactly the topic? How anal and effed up are you if you can't deal with your food touching other food items on your plate? That is like demented. You ever eat with somebody who literally separates, like by a half an inch, each of the different things? Do you not find that really troubling?
We have someone in the family who eats. They'll only eat the starch first, and then
That's
they'll eat
not
the
true.
vegetables, and then they'll eat the meat.
And you don't? Do you think that's a problem?
We all talk about them behind their
do.
back. It's terrible. But she talks about how when he serves it, it's such a mess that the food is sliding off the plate. All you have to do is like take a paper towel or something and just wipe around so that
Why doesn't she
everything's
take the paper
sliding
towel
off
and wipe around?
Because she's sitting.
He's
at
been
the
cooking
table.
all day. So here's an anonymous texter. This is on your side. It's called weaponized incompetence by the husband.
Exactly.
He's the
Passive
a-hole.
aggressive.
His behavior shows a lack of consideration and demonstrates a lack of care. Underlying message, I won't ever cook again. That's what at least the anonymous texter is suggesting.
Yeah. You have people talk about this in different areas of their marriage
so?
where, I don't want to get too far off topic,
go.
In infant care, the husband can never do anything right. The partner that did not give birth is always doing things wrong. They can't change the diaper right. They can't do the bottle right. And so they finally give up. The person that's always criticized by mom for doing everything wrong, they give up. And that's what's going to happen to Jim. He's just going to stop cooking for her. That's going to be the end
So
of
you
it.
agree with me? She's the a-hole.
No, I think
she's creating a situation where she's going to discourage him from being. He's not even a cook, by the way. She's the primary cook. He's doing it because she's home late, and she's complaining despite the fact that, I'm serious, they went out of his way to make her a damn meal.
Here's what she says, Jim. I'd love a little more tenderness. It takes 30 seconds to arrange things properly. May I dare to dream? If he could wipe the edge of the plate with a tea towel and clear up any loose bits of food. I'm not asking for a Michelin star. I'm just asking him to treat the plate with a little more tenderness.
Well, can I ask you something in the same voice? What is a tea towel? What is a tea towel?
I don't know. I guess you use a towel when you're serving tea.
What is a tea?
No, let's not. Thank you very much. Peter in the...
That was Topo Gigio.
No, it was not.
Wondering.
It was my imitation of Topo Gigio.
Which is better than the real Topo Gigio. He sounds very sinister
Okay,
to me.
Peter in the car. Who's the
Hi,
a-hole?
Peter.
Lindsay the wife or Jim the husband? Hello there, Peter.
I don't think either of them is the a-hole. I think they have a disconnect. So does the wife want the husband to cook a meal? Or does she want him to do something nice, doesn't matter what, that shows that he really appreciates and understands her? I think she wants appreciation. And what he's thinking is, oh, well, she's working late, I'll make her food. She wants food, right?
Correct.
But that's not what she wants. She wants appreciation. So if he wants to show it appreciation, then it does not matter what her preferences is or how detailed or unreasonable they might be. If he wants to show appreciation to her, he needs to respect whatever her preferences are.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
You like a shrink or something, Peter? What do you do for a living?
I'm a computer science teacher, but I'm also married for 12 plus years, and I have learned some lessons along the way.
So you do not whack the food onto the plate.
It's a hostile gesture from him to her. Wouldn't you say, Peter? It's to whack the food on the plate and leave it all hanging over the side of the plate.
What's up, Peter?
I'm not sure it's hostile. Maybe it's more ignorant, but I think that I certainly have been in situations where I did something I thought was nice, and then my wife didn't necessarily, appreciate or criticize me, and then I realized later that I didn't do it in a way that was understanding her desires. I didn't do it in a way that would make her happy.
Peter,
and the whole point of this was I wasn't approaching it the right way.
Peter, I hope things work out for you, but let me tell you, there are a lot of people looking for a person like you. Peter, thanks for the call.
Okay, we have some suggestions.
Are you going to read? Okay, here's an anonymous text.
Okay.
Jim is being passive-aggressive, and with good reason. Bravo, Jim. No, not you, Jim.
Jim.
Thank you.
That's right.
Okay.
So maybe Jim needs to get the wife one of those toddler plates, the ones where you have separate
little
sections.
Dividers, yeah.
Each divider. And then somebody else says, clearly, the wife is out of her mind.
Okay. No, by the way, those divider things, do you know that I want...
Oh, listen to this one.
What's that?
Lindsay is the a-hole. That's the wife.
What?
Sloppy presentation is nothing compared to what your meal looks like after you've eaten it.
Oh, that's really
That
nice.
is a
I'm really
very
glad you read
good
that.
point.
No, that is
because it's very
disgusting.
messy after you eat it, right?
I don't think that's what they're talking about, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Think a little further down the line.
I thought they were talking about the plate.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
By the way, if you
That's
let me
ruined
ask you,
everything,
the other problem, we're going to get to your calls in a second. The other problem with Lindsay's complaints, how many times in your whole life have you ever needed a tea towel to wipe the sides? I'm serious. How many times is the food running off the sides of the plates?
Usually
Does that ever happen in your whole life?
Paper towel, not a tea towel.
Well, when does that ever happen to you?
When you make a cake and you frost it, that's where I've had that happen.
You don't like that when that's the stuff that goes over the edge of the plate?
I clean it up.
Great.
You don't want to bring out the birthday cake. I just made one the other day.
I lick it off.
And you probably do lick it off. But when you're coming out with the birthday cake and everybody's singing happy birthday, you want the frosting to be, even edged. You want a nice edge.
You know what Lindsay would say? I don't like the angle at which the candles are stuck in the cake you made all day, Jim. Be grateful that he did a nice thing. And by the way, do you think he means it hostilely, that he's whacking everything on the plate?
I think it is a hostile gesture.
No, he does not.
Yeah, I think it's hostile.
No, it's not.
He knows that she can't stand it, and he keeps whacking nonetheless.
Well, if she didn't complain about not standing it, he would not be whacking it on the plate. The whacking is a total response to the complaining.
Picture that too. Close your eyes and watch somebody
whacking it on the plate.
Whack the food onto the plate.
Yeah.
It's a hostile
She uses
gesture.
the word slapping, by the way.
No,
she says he slaps the food on the plate.
He's the one that admits it.
That he whacks it on
what
the
he
plate.
says.
Yeah.
He says, no, I just whack it on the plate.
Whack it on the plate, yeah.
She says, I slap the food, which isn't my intention.
Yeah.
You know why?
No.
Because he doesn't slap it, Jim.
He whacks it. No, I know.
He whacks
You
it
said that
like with a
12
baseball
times.
bat.
Okay, fine. That's good. Let's go to
Okay,
Jonathan in Cambridge.
Hi, Jonathan.
Who's the a-hole here?
Yeah, I think that I cook dinner for my wife every night.
Oh,
and I think that's an act of love and caring. And I look at it at two levels. So the presentation matters, but I also come at it from the standpoint of respecting the food. In this society, we increasingly just don't respect the food, and so taking the care to put it on the plate nicely is, I think, part of the cooking process.
So for example, if you made salmon, and let's say, what are those little curly things that people eat that are always horrible? Those curly green things.
I have no
Whatever
idea.
they are. If the salmon was overlapping, what are they called?
Fiddlehead?
Fiddleheads, thank you. I can't stand fiddleheads. I don't know why I thought of that.
Who eats fiddleheads?
If the salmon was overlapping the fiddleheads, would you undo the overlapping to be respectful of your wife?
I mean, if I was trying to be intentional about I have no issue with food touching each other, but the idea of slapping stuff down and just kind of heaving the plate at her, I would never do.
Well, I don't know if he heaved the plate there, but Jonathan, thank you.
I know.
That was a good addition.
The
food on it. He heaves it at her.
Love the show, guys.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Listener. Love the show.
We really appreciate it.
We have an
Thank
art
you.
historian here
What do
who's
they
writing
say?
in and says, I think if the food is described as looking like abstract expressionism, we have to ask if it's more like a Jackson Pollock or a Mark Rothko, because people may remember Jackson Pollock has all the stripes crossing over each other, and Mark Rothko makes like straight lines. Yeah, things are very neat in a Mark Rothko.
I can tell you something.
What?
Every time our staff surprises us, they just wrote us a note. Says staff has obtained exclusive audio of the slap in question.
Oh.
Every time they do this,
it's not a slap, it's a whack.
It's atrocious.
Okay.
So should we give this a chance or not?
We'll give it a try.
Okay, they allegedly
Here we go.
have
All right.
sound, exclusive audio, exclusive sound of the slap or the whack, I guess, in question. Here it is. Okay.
Oh, do that again.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Can't you hear in the end of that
It's the mashed potatoes sitting.
hitting the plate?
Yeah.
But one more time.
That's really not right. That's not right. Hey, by the way, can I add something? Was it Jonathan who just called from Cambridge?
I don't know.
There's no evidence that the husband heaved the plate of the whacked items at the wife. That was an addition that Jonathan.
There's a lot of violent verbs here. Slapping, whacking.
No, there's no
heaving.
evidence.
Oh, play that again.
No, don't play it again.
Yeah, play.
Thank you.
What does that sound like to you? Would you want to eat the food that sounded like that landing on your plate?
If it was free, I would like to eat the food. That is correct. I would.
Joan on Cape Cod, thank you for calling.
Joan, hello on the Cape there. Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
So,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
life is just, I just don't understand this at all because really good relationships are about compromise.
Exactly.
And what I would do if I were the wife, I'm coming home, my husband's has cooked dinner for me.
Yeah.
I would plate. So it's all about compromise.
Oh, you would plate it yourself.
That's right.
For both of us.
That is brilliant.
Several people have suggested
That is very Solomonic,
What is the
Joan.
problem here, Joan? They're saying, why doesn't she just plate her own food and then she wouldn't have to worry about
Joan,
it?
that was brilliant. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's a
But
perfect.
no, she can plate it for both of them.
That is even
Plate it
better.
for both of them. That's even better.
Played it. That's fabulous,
Yep.
actually. Thank you.
Okay,
Joan.
the
Appreciate
husband
it.
is the a-hole by
How's that?
insisting on slopping the food on the plate. He's being passively hostile, period. Yeah, he cooked dinner, but he's slamming his wife with the presentation after making her a nice dinner. I tell you, Jim, they could be headed for divorce court.
We just found out there is an addition to the story, and it does say that one night when he did heave the plate, she failed to duck. And that I'm not defending. I want to be clear.
Maybe that's not the food. Maybe that's the wife. Let's listen to that again.
It's really it's not. By the way, it's really you're getting yourself in a little bit of trouble here. Okay.
I am not advocating
encouraging this.
any violence whatsoever.
Oh,
but-
look who's here, Chef Bill.
Chef Bill
from Pelham.
Hi, Chef Bill.
Where are you on this? You have particular, obviously, expertise in the area. Welcome.
Yes, I do. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking the call.
Pleasure.
Well, in this case, I think the wife is the a-hole.
Thank you.
Because something before the food is plated.
Yeah.
You were pretty clear that the husband has a lot of anxiety, and he's not comfortable in the kitchen.
Exactly.
He's not.
Exactly.
He could have built a kitchen, yet he's not comfortable cooking. So the wife should take 5 minutes one evening, and just as the previous caller said, show him how to plate the food. Because once you realize it, because he might not see it, by the time, as you said, by the time the food is done, he just can't wait to get out the plate and be done with it. He's having anxiety.
I think that analysis is brilliant, Chef Bill.
Well, this is the way he
Thank
puts
you
it,
very
Chef
much.
Bill. He says he just wants to get the food over the finish line. That's how he views it. Listen to this, Alyssa in Medford. She says, I get offended when my husband haphazardly throws a plate together after I've made all the components for the meal. I have a vision of what a plate should be. I work so hard on each plate that when he heaps the food onto his plate like he's in line in a prison, it is very, very sad to me.
Well, by the way, there's no evidence of recidivism, first of all. So he did his time, and he's trying to do a little favor to him. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you mix your things together when you, like if you have, let's stay with the same plate. Let's assume it is mashed potatoes, peas, and meatloaf.
Oh, my God. You got to mix those together.
So
don't forget the gravy.
Yeah, the gravy.
The gravy,
How
absolutely.
about Thanksgiving? Do you celebrate Thanksgiving in your religion?
Oh, I mix the...
You do?
I don't think Thanksgiving's about religion.
Oh, whatever it is, you do. Do you celebrate that?
Mix the vegetables together?
How about the gravy and the, you would call them fixins, which gives me hives, the stuffing and the turkey,
stuffing,
and you mix them all together.
You got to mix them together.
You know what that's called, by the way, what you're doing on Thanksgiving? Whacking. That is what it is. It's called whacking. Trust me.
The point is,
what is the point?
You should be allowed to do your own arranging or whacking yourself. You don't want someone else to do it for you because they might have a special way to eat the Thanksgiving turkey with all the fixings. You know what I mean? You don't. Some people might not want to mix certain things, so you never know.
I love mixed taste. Do you like mixed taste? Or mixed taste great?
Yes.
When you combine, you combine them and
Well, mashed potatoes
almost mix with everything
and other things. I mean, you really can't beat it, can you?
No, it's just.
I was thinking yesterday of putting my French fries in the mayonnaise. That was probably over the top.
We did it. We had our retreat lunch. You did put them in the mayonnaise.
I did. I know. It's bad.
Amazing.
Okay,
Server
let's go
was very
to
upset with
Erica
me.
in the car. Hi,
Erica in the car. What's your deal? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I think the guy is the a-hole because he wants special credit for cooking.
He does.
Actually,
And
there's some truth to that. Yeah. Go ahead.
We don't do that with women. And if I were the cook and my spouse had a quirk about keeping his food separate, I would, as a matter of course, honor that quirk.
Wow, another incredibly well thought out call. Erica, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very concise, very good.
Here's Lorraine from New Hampshire.
What'd she say?
My husband of 57 years only knows how to cook two things, scrambled eggs and instant oatmeal. And then, only rarely. If he were to cook a whole meal, I would be happy if he served it to me in his shoe.
That's a good one.
Oh, my God. Let's hope it's not his sneakers that he takes to work out in.
This is one of the days where I really love, we have eaten at dinner together, I don't remember, but I would guess that Jared is a total pro separation of food items on the plate. Oh, of course you are. Don't even try.
I let the olive touch the vodka. I have no problem with my different food groups touching each other.
Okay. But you have the misophonia thing?
Misophonia.
Yeah, that means you don't
National Misophonia Day is coming up. Somebody, a listener sent me an email. It might even be today.
We should do
Google
a
it.
segment on that.
Know.
Don't you think?
Let's look it up.
I think so. But the thing is, you don't want to hear people chewing.
No, because this is the weird thing about it. When I'm eating, it doesn't bother me to hear other people eat.
It doesn't. Okay. Okay. Okay.
And
so,
I knew you were going to say that.
So how do you feel about
smushing the peas and the mashed potatoes and the gravy all together?
Well, that's what you're supposed to do.
It's like an S&M thing. This is not really like the sound.
Oh, God.
You know, this is like...
What was that?
Okay, let's stop with that. July 9th is National Misophonia Day.
But really, do you want to mix everything together? You don't. You want to do it yourself.
Jared, by the way, if you're not watching YouTube, is turning bright red, which obviously means a very touchy subject with him.
Well, no, because of the conversation we were just having in the control room with Jamie conjuring these noises.
I bet he is.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Thank you. And that one, too. Okay, this is really horrible.
No, I do. I think this is
over,
like
thank
all
God.
of these. They're all passive aggressive. This is just
Exactly.
But I think she is the jerk because
You
he's
Thank you.
cooking the dinner. Hello.
Thank you. Exactly.
Okay. You're both sexist dogs.
Maybe
no question
not.
about it.
Just
Do you
make me my
believe-
food and put it
What do
down
you-
nice.
So what do you do on National? We'll wait till July 9th to get really deeply
Oh, my
into it.
God.
What do you do on National Misophonia Day to celebrate? What do you do?
Well, I hope we'll be embraced everywhere we go with kind hugs and people not eating around us all day long.
Yeah, so if
Did you
you're
tell
eating,
somebody famous had misophonia or somebody we know besides you? Didn't you tell
Kelly
us?
Ripa has it. Marianne Leone has
Oh,
it.
that's Marianne Leone told us, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Is there like a
All the
society
special
or a
people.
Facebook group or what?
We have a kind of back channel communications.
Okay.
Kelly and I.
Kelly, yeah.
So if you're in the car with somebody chewing gum, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, gee, I have to
Just
remember that.
slowly open the door and. Oh my goodness!
Okay.
I can't believe that Marjorie just rolled out of the car like that. That was so weird. How did that happen?
What are you
you know,
doing on
okay.
the show
I'll
thing?
keep that in mind.
What are you doing?
We're talking to our brand new state poet laureate now that we have one, which is
Reggie.
very
Cool.
exciting. Reggie Gibson will be here. He's going to be performing a couple of poems.
Oh, fabulous.
The new executive director of Passim, Club Passim, he's going to be joining us. It's all about newness.
Read
and
about
then
that the other day,
Nina
too.
McLaughlin, who wrote Winter Solstice. We talked about that on the show. She's also written Summer Solstice. It is just a beautiful look at what this time of the year is like. So we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was lovely.
I wouldn't really push you out of the car, probably.
No.
I was worried about legal liability. That's the only reason
Remember,
he
no
said
gum.
that.
No gum in the car with
Nice
Jared.
to see
Jared,
you,
thank
Jared
you very
Bowen.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you all for listening to another edition
Bye.
of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 via our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're back at the Boston Public Library with Ask the GM of the Tea from 1 to 2, when you get to have your complaints or ask your questions to Phil Lang, one of the most popular people.
Or praise him if you want to.
In the city of Boston, by the way, or maybe around the state. We'll also talk with Ron Mitchell from the Bay State Banner and Boston Globe columnist Joan Vanaki for our media analysis segment. Press play, then it is live music Friday with the flamenco band Alba Music. Jim says he can do the flamenco. We'll see. David Weil will also join us. He's former administrator of the Wage and Hour Division of the U.S. Department.
David Weil,
sorry.
Yeah.
Of the Division of the U.S. Department of Labor under President Barack Obama.
He's going to talk about how workers are being treated in this administration. It's horrible.
Thank you, Jim.
Unsurprisingly.
We want to thank our crew. Zoe Matthews did that great piece on music for protests. Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Claw Parker, our executive producer Jay Bologna, Eddie Hickey. Thank you to Eddie for operating today's live stream. The Culture Show is next with Jared Bowen. It sounds like a great one today. Starting right after us, I'm Marjorie Eakin.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you can tune in
Bye.
tomorrow and have a great day.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you
and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/Mount Ida campus. Asylum seekers process heartbreak and joy as they await uncertain futures in one of the few queer-focused shelters in Tijuana. Don't miss POV Shorts, Jardines, tonight at 9:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org